Hey, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. What's
Hey.
up?
Not much. This has been I don't know. How much have you heard about what happened?
I heard a little bit last night. I haven't heard that much at all, actually. I've heard a little bit. I've heard a lot of people said you had a frustrating conversation, and I was just curious to go over it because it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
But
No, I
yeah,
totally
that's
get it.
basically all I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. So basically, like, I don't know. I'm in a weird position right now. I explained a little bit to you over, like, DMs.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wait, you know I'm streaming, right? You said you're streaming.
yeah. No, yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Just making sure.
we're both
Okay.
live.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, like, I don't know, like, I don't mind, like, I don't mind sharing anything that, usually when I DM people, I don't mind sharing that.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
like, obviously I explained a little bit, about just like my concerns and also like things that I've gotten a lot from the community.
Mm-hmm.
My community is in a weird position right now because there's a lot of people in it who really like Demon Mama, and there's
Mm-hmm.
also a lot of people
Yeah.
in it who really do not like you, and
Oh yeah.
a lot of those people are right now very heavily comparing me to you and saying that's a negative quality, you know, and especially
Nice.
as a consequence of this, right? Like, there's a lot of parallels that people are drawing between like you and Vosh versus me and Demon Mama. Again, whether or not that's accurate,
Oh,
that's
I saw that on because when I clicked your YouTube video, I was just scrolling through some of the comments, and I think one of the top ones I saw was, "This is this is like the mom version of Destiny and Vosh."
yeah.
I saw that. Yeah.
So like it's a very weird situation for me to be in because like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, for the longest time at this point, I mean, like I'm still relatively small, so like I haven't made any like big choices, or I haven't been put between like a rock or a hard place in terms of like people who I associate with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like I feel like I've been able to associate with largely yours and like Vosh's communities,
Mm-hmm.
pretty decently. And I mean, like, I don't know, I'm very like I like both of you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm able to do a pretty good job of like maintaining relationships with people who I disagree. And honestly, I probably disagree with Vosh more on takes, but also like there's some that I just there are some issues I don't necessarily want to debate as a public figure.
Sure.
Like I don't know as much about economics, so I'm not going to talk about economics because I don't know as much about them. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to stick to things I know better. And so like, and so for the longest time, my community has, I think, grown as a consequence of that. And there's a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
in it who really like you, and there's a lot of people and like people associated with you. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's also a lot of people who really like Vosh, and a lot of people associated with Vosh. And Demon Mama is very closely associated with me. Or, sorry, not closely. Well, I mean, like, is associated with me. Like, we've been friendly. And up until recently, we've been, like, very amicable.
Mm-hmm.
But has also been very heavily associated with Vosh, right? And so there's a lot of people who like her for a number of reasons, but those probably heavily contributing in some way.
Sure.
And so when we debated last night, essentially it was a debate, and like you can watch, and everyone can
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not saying anything that isn't public knowledge. Like, we debated this really big issue on what does it mean to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it comes across like this is a sensitive subject, right? Like, it is a sensitive subject. It's a sensitive subject to a lot
Yeah.
of people because like at the heart of it is like, what does it mean to be a gender?
It's
And
super easy to drop into like being a transmedicalist or something like
yeah,
that, like very quickly. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it's really hard because like well, I mean, like, it's frustrating to me on two levels, right? Because like
Mm-hmm.
the first part of this is that like the argument that I made was the exact same argument that I've been making for a long time now. Like, I formalized this argument, like I put it, like I usually do like research docs, like targeted documents.
Yeah,
Um,
I've seen you tweet. Yeah.
yeah, and so like I usually put them down like I try to be like very specific with my wording, formulate them,
Mm-hmm.
like get my thoughts in order, and then put them down so I can be like consistent. Because like I'm not
Mm-hmm.
gonna sit here and act like I can memorize all this. Like, it's a
Yeah,
ton
of
of
course.
literature, but I mean like but I figure these are like decent tools so I can be able to get through most of the time, with a decent degree of consistency, and so
Mm-hmm.
like and so here, I've been using this argument for a long time, and no one in my community had taken any issue. And I think, upon reflection, that it was as a consequence of the fact that I had largely used them against transphobes. You know, like when
Wait,
like
that you use them against trans folks?
yeah, like I use these arguments against transphobes, right? Like the argument of what is a woman. Like I use this in an argument against someone who
Wait,
unironically
oh,
are
I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm just making sure. You use these arguments against transphobes.
yeah, like
Oh,
arguments
okay.
that trans women are
I
women.
thought you were saying trans folks. Sorry,
No,
I
no,
got really
oh,
confused.
no, no,
Okay.
sorry, yeah, transphobes. Like I use
Mhm.
the arguments I formulate with my community against people who argue against the validity of trans people.
Gotcha. I understand. Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and so like I feel like people probably do not take as much of an issue. Like for example, when I'm like when I'm using this against someone who's unironically advocating that we should have gender checkers outside of every bathroom, right?
Mhm.
People at that point are probably going to hear whatever I say and be like, oh, well, as long as Riley sounds like she's winning, then, I'm just going to go along with it.
Unfortunate, but very true. Yeah.
Yeah. And so here, it's like my impression is that like since it came up, because like at the start of the conversation, and like you'll see this, everyone can see this if they watch. Like the conversation started out like very like conversational. Before the debate happened, like we had actually been like joking and like having a good time. We had like a joke debate about whether or not furries deserved rights, which actually unironically came up again later on. That was interesting. But like but it was just very surprising to me because I think it was as largely a consequence that like it came up with someone that my community liked.
Yeah.
And so, as a consequence of that, a lot of people in my community have been very upset by this. A lot of people in my community have started, like, there's essentially, like, a lot of my admins, and I'm trying, and I don't know if they listen to me. I don't know if they, I don't know if they believe this. Oh, also, we need to get to, like, the most important point, but a lot of people are basically, like, taking the totality of the situation, and it's really... I mean, like, to me, it's doing a lot of harm personally. I'm just decent at kind of like shouldering it usually. I mean, like, a lot of people are now like drawing hard lines saying that like I'm a terrible person or that I'm true scum, trans medicalist. Largely, I think because I tried putting a label on what it means to be trans, like just trying to define the term, I think has triggered some kind of response that like, oh, Riley must be a trans medicalist because she's trying to put a definition. It's like, I literally tried to advocate for like the most inclusive definition of what it means to be trans, and so it's very confusing.
The thing that is coming to mind immediately on this, I don't know if you watch any of ContraPoint's videos, but Natalie taking issue with the phrase "trans women are women" and kind of like her argument that like this is nice to say, but it kind of can miss the point sometimes, and that it like misses a lot of the conversation. Yeah, it feels like for a lot of these statements, people hardcore moralize every single sentence, and it makes it impossible to navigate it with any kind of reasonable conversation. Because basically, if you say the wrong thing, there is no disagreement. It's either you love trans people, or you fucking hate all trans people. There's nothing in between in terms of like even just defining something with some level of rigidity. Even if you are completely cool with like trans rights, and not trans rights like they can go in bathrooms, but trans rights like they should have access to gender affirming surgery, that they should have access to puberty blockers, that like all of these things. Yeah, you can still get labeled transphobic if you're not 100% on board with even the diction, which is very frustrating, I think.
Yeah.
Probably triply so for you, because at the end of the day, for me, it's a debate topic, and for other people, these are like very way more personal matters, of course.
Yeah. No, and yeah, and that's like obviously I'm like literally my being, and the being and like my entire community, which is like a big reason why I think a lot of people have like a very personal response to this. I'm just usually like, I don't know, like decent about just, I don't know, like I don't want to make it out that I have like some special quality. It's just like I'm trying to keep a level head with all this.
Yeah, sure.
And so like, but I do want to bring up something because my chat's telling me, informing me that Dima Mama just ended her stream as a consequence of this. So something that like I was talking to.
Wait, I'm sorry, real quick. When you say ended her stream, you mean like she's stopped streaming, or
like she stopped streaming? Like
forever?
She was live streaming and she stopped. So I do want to.
Wait, hold on. I'm just so I understand. Like she quit streaming completely, or she just like ended her stream?
I'm just told that like she was, like, she had her live stream on her website.
Okay, gotcha. And then she just turned her stream off.
Yeah,
but not
she
like
turned her
quit
stream
forever.
off. Yeah, she didn't quit forever.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, and so something I do want to bring up, because like this is like the biggest reason it seems to me why people probably have an issue with me like associating with you. or being compared with you, or just like generally like being in the same circle as you, is because a lot of people in this particular situation especially, but also broadly, well, I mean, like in this situation, people are making the claim that like you and your community are driving hate towards Demon Mama and harassment. And then people are saying, and I don't agree with this necessarily, but like some people are saying that you're transphobic generally. I don't like I don't agree with that generally, just based on what I know of you. But like I'm trying to think that like because like obviously I haven't been firsthand exposure of like transphobia at your community. But I guess that like the main thing that I just want to make sure is that your community is not like if you do watch the video, right? Like now, you know, the cat's out of the bag. The the title of the stream was already kind of up. It's already up on your it's already up on your subreddit from what I was told recently. So I mean, like everyone is aware of this, right? And so now people are essentially concerned, and it seems like Demon Mom is of the impression, if I'm going to read, you know, if there's anything to read into the action of like taking down her stream.
Wait, hold on. No, I'm sorry. Just finish. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. It seems like people are going to read in that like your
Wait,
community...
no. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. This is so fucking rude. Okay. I'm sorry. This is the only time I'm going to do this. Okay. It's very frustrating to me that I get labeled transphobic like all across like communities now, where I feel like I've been like incredibly consistent on my stances for transphobia or whatever. Just so like your chat is in agreement right now that like Destiny got really excited that Demon Mama stream was going down. I was just trying to understand what you were saying. So like earlier when you were saying transphobes or transfolks, I'm just trying to clarify so I understand what you're saying. I'm not like
oh okay. Like, are you like responding to people in like your chat?
I'm just because I see like people say stuff like that, like, oh, Destiny really loves taking down trans women, blah 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 blah. It's just very 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 frustrating when I see people say shit like that. Like that's not the case. I'm just clarifying what you're saying. Okay. Sorry, continue. I won't interrupt you for dumb shit and that I see in chats anymore. Okay,
no, you're all good. Sorry. But yeah, so basically like I have to collect my thoughts again. So essentially, like, people are probably going to read into that situation, whether or not it is justified that, like, your community caused that. Now, I don't know the particulars of the circumstance. I don't know if, like, your community went and did that. But the main thing that I want to stress is just that, like, your community, I don't know, like... I want to make sure that, like, you're taking every reasonable step that you can. I understand that, like, we can't completely control what our communities do, but I do want to look at, like, for as much as I disagree with the Demon Mama and this, you know, from as much as, like, I do not have a high opinion of her morally after the events of what happened, you know, like, I do care about her as a human being. I don't want her to suffer harassment. I don't want anyone to suffer harassment. And I just want to make sure that, like, you're stressing your community, like, hey, listen, you know, we can review this, we can talk about this. This is in the public domain, so, you know, like, it can be worth talking about. Just to not, like, take that into, like, sending, like, a lot of people were saying that, like, she was being sent transphobic tweets on Twitter. I haven't seen these, but that's what I'm told, so you can do with that what you will.
Wait, that you are or that I am?
No, that your fans are. That your fans are sending transphobic
unfortunately, something that's very frustrating. I do try my best generally. Like, oftentimes when I get into, like, really big disagreements, so the Demon Mama disagreement was especially huge. Anything that gets clipped and posted on live stream fail, there's always going to be so many shitheads that jump in. And start doing shit like that.
Sure.
And I have no control over that, but I get blamed for all of it. So which is frustrating, but yeah, I understand what you're saying though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I think that there are still, like, reasonable steps that we can take to try and mitigate that as much as possible. Like, I understand we're not going to be able, especially, like, as someone who has a large platform like you do, you know, like, for me, I'm going to have a lot more control over my community because it's much smaller. But, like, you being in the position where I understand that you're not going to be able to control everyone, but, you know, like, there are steps that we can take to, like, reasonably try to mitigate that. Obviously, like, you know, like, giving the correct takes, like, during stream is going, like, in your content in a way that can't be clipped out. Like, that's good. A lot of people are worried about, you know, like, I think that there are other things that you can do, like, you can explicitly disclaim at the beginning of talking about a segment, like, hey, listen, we're going to be watching a video. I just want to make it extremely clear to people that, like, I do not go out and harass any of the people involved. If you do, then, I mean, like, the policy that I use is that, like, if you do that, then I will ban you. If you do that, then we're not going to allow you in the community. Like, that is explicitly, like, if there's any word of any of that happening, if there's any word of organizing that, if there's any word of any of that, explicit, like gonzo. You're
Yep.
not
And I
here.
do that 1,000,000%, more hardcore than I know anybody else that does do it. So for
Oh
instance,
shit.
the call that I usually give is if I find out that somebody's doing that, even in another person's Twitch chat, we'll usually ban them from my Twitch chat, my DGG community, and my Discord. Like you get banned from everything. The brigading and stuff is something that I hardcore enforce in my community generally.
Okay. No, that's wonderful. That's great. Yeah, I mean, like just taking steps like that, like obviously we can't control everyone, but taking like reasonable steps like that, disclaiming, like I think that as long as people do that, then, you know, like obviously like certain things are going to be a natural consequence of the internet, and there's not going to be much we can do about that. Another thing
But
that
we do what we
people,
can,
yeah, another thing that people wanted me to bring up in relation to talking to you about this, because like, I don't know, like it's kind of weird because the Demon Mama drama, that's a little, anyway, yeah. So like the
Like an
drama
episode of
here,
Jersey Shore. I know what you mean, yeah.
yeah. It's a hard situation because like it is kind of linked, at least in terms of, at least thematically, to what happened between you and her, right? Like I think that like one reason why it was probably posted to your subreddit is because like there were a lot of like similar things that happened in both of our experience. Like that's my best guess, is that there's probably a lot of similarities in experience. Now the thing that is hard about that is that like that also, like insofar as I'm involved, has meant that like my community has brought up some of the things that that weren't necessarily related to my and her debate in particular, but which were pertinent to yours and hers and are kind of impugning me by association.
Do you remember what was my debate with her even about? Do you remember?
So I mean, like the biggest thing that came out of it was the trans like it's good to, like, you can tell me if this is accurate representation or not. I didn't watch all of it. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say that I watch every debate. But essentially people are saying that the take that you had was the I bully trans people, or it's good to bully it's good to bully trans creators off of Twitter take. And that
Jesus.
you defended
Okay. So the defended take that I have is that like there are going to be people that I bully that I think are horrible to public discourse. Some of them might be trans, but I don't like target trans people.
Right.
That's a pretty, but yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. I've seen the proof. If someone wants to talk, okay, hold on. Meanwhile,
Yeah, what's up?
Okay, hold on. A lot of people are posting things to my Destiny is lying. He refused to enforce cross-platform bans for DMM.
Yeah, so earlier, I said generally I will like hardcore enforce cross-platform bans. I did do this for DM originally, but when she went to Twitter afterwards and started saying that I was transphobic, that my community was encouraging harassment, blah 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 blah, I told people I didn't care about it anymore. I specifically said it in regards to her, but I can reinforce it here. But if somebody's gonna go like out of their way to call me transphobic and say that my community is transphobic and that we don't do anything about it, I'm not gonna go out of my way to like try to baby them like through the online conversations. Like, yeah.
All right, wait, hold on.
But this was very specifically in regards to only Dima Mama, and was only after she continued to say that my community was like organizing like transphobic hate against her. When I'm pretty sure most of it was coming from outside the community anyway.
Okay, hold on. Elson posted something. People are like, there's a lot of hostility in my chat. I mean, like this is what I was talking about. But I mean, like this is good to be able to just like address it, right? I've seen the proof. If someone wants to send this to me. All right, so same person posted. All right, there was a message from you. Right to bear arms, lol. Forethought. We're no longer enforcing cross-platform bans against Steam Mama nor Chaos as Mel, and starting tomorrow night, all of their content is banned from my community for excessive transphobia. Destiny, because I'm not going to enforce any rules protecting transphobes, and both Demon and Mel are transphobic. That's what she posted.
So you could see from that, we were enforcing it prior to that, but then afterwards it was like, nope, okay, fuck it.
Okay. So I'm trying to think. Can you just explain again, like, why it's fine to not, like, to draw that line? I'm just trying to think through it again.
So I think that when it comes to cross-platform harassment, I go above and beyond most content creators. I think that most people will ban harassment in their chat, which I still do and I'll continue to do. However, when in terms of enforcing like off-platform behavior, I think that that's like a courtesy that I extend that is like far above and beyond what's to be expected. And if somebody's going to continue to accuse me of being like transphobic or my community to do it, I'm not going to extend that courtesy or privilege to them. It's too much time. It's too time consuming to do it. Like this is like a really big extra step that I do in terms of like trying to mitigate harassment against people that I talk to, is doing the cross-platform enforcement.
So I mean, like, all right. So I'm not familiar with like cross. So like, explain that like the cross-platform. Like,
Most people when it comes to banning people for doing bad things is like if somebody says something transphobic in your Twitch chat,
Sure.
then you ban them for it, right?
Yeah.
Which most people do that, right? What we do in my community is if we see somebody is engaging in like transphobic behavior off platform, we will ban them on all of our platforms.
Okay.
So let's say, for instance, someone in my chat comes in and starts making transphobic comments, you ban them, of course. But let's say that you see somebody on Twitter is harassing somebody and they're being homophobic or transphobic or hateful, whatever. If we find out who that is, we will ban them from my chat, my Discord, and then my DGG chat. Like they get banned everywhere. That type of like cross-platform enforcement, though, I would consider as being like above and beyond. But if somebody's going to continue to accuse us of doing it anyway, I'd rather just ban all their content and say I'm not enforcing that anymore. So if somebody comes to me saying like, "Oh, Jesse's community," blah, blah, I'm just not going to worry about it. So like the whole point of that message was like, I'm not worrying about these two people anymore. Don't care about them. I consider them both to be transphobic. I'm banning all mentions of them. I'm not enforcing any cross-platform anything. Like fuck all that shit. I'm just leaving it alone, basically. But the idea that like I stopped banning transphobic comments or I stopped banning like cross-platform harassment is not true. Like it was literally with these two people. I just wanted to delist all of their content from my community.
Okay, but I mean, like, I don't know, I do agree that like it is good that like I agree it's a good thing to be able to have like cross-platform enforcement, right? Like I agree. I think that you probably do, at least to the best of my knowledge. Like probably go above and beyond what most people do. I know that I certainly don't do that with my community. It's younger and it's smaller, so I'm
I
not
don't
sure.
think anyone else does, but yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I'm trying to think, like, I understand the reasoning why you might not want to do that, but I mean, like, I'm not sure if the idea that just that, like, oh, just because I don't like these people personally doesn't mean I'm necessarily not going to enforce the rules.
It's not about not liking them personally. It's that I consider both of them to be highly transphobic people. That was why I didn't want to have anything to do with it anymore, and I wanted their content banned from my community.
Why is
I consider what?
Or, sorry, like, yeah, why are the both of them transphobic? This is news to me.
So I can't speak to your conversation, but I have a very large trans community in my community.
Okay.
And when I get into disagreements with trans people over certain things, not like being transphobic, but just conversation related to it, when those trans people start calling trans people in my community trans medicalists or saying that they're like secret TERFs or like they have like some self-trans hatred because they disagree with my topics, I consider that to be transphobic. And that was the big reason why I wanted to. I think that was the thing that pushed me over was it was either Chaos's Mel in defense of Demon Mama, or both of them were coming out and saying like, oh, the trans people in Destiny's community are trans medicalists. They're true scum. And when people start levying that at my trans community, I don't know if I own my trans community, then yeah, there was like, nope, fuck these people. Like I consider both of them to be transphobic. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I mean, like she hasn't, as far as I'm aware, they haven't levied that necessarily against me personally.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I necessarily disagree with that. I think that it's, well, I mean, like obviously I'm on TERF is transphobic. You heard it. Well, I mean, like, all right.
Calling other trans people like true scum or TERFs or trans medicalists just because you guys, when I haven't seen any true scum or trans medicalist takes in my community, I consider that weaponization of somebody's identity against themselves, I would consider that to be like pretty transphobic when it didn't seem to be on any good grounds. Like, I think that there are trans people that you could probably levy that take at. Now, let me be careful here because I don't know if she's changed her views recently, but like Blair White, somebody that came off to me hardcore as being like a trans medicalist or like a true scum. Now, I don't know if that's the case anymore, but like I can understand saying to her, but for people in my community that were just disagreeing with some of the things that Demon Mama or Chaos Mama were saying, to call them like true scum or whatever is like, that's way too much. Like, nah. Okay. Oh, here you go. So here's like the I'm trying to be so careful here because I don't want to say somebody said something they didn't, but I know like this was one of the tweets from Chaos's Mal. Like I consider this to be transphobic, like 100%. Like just this is like so cut and dry for me. Like,
okay. My chat's giving me a lot, so I'm gonna start paying much more attention to them.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but I mean, like, actually, no, screw it. I'm just gonna go full screen. Okay. So I mean, like, here's the thing about it, right? Because like I can see, glad that a bunch of nice Isley Friends person is telling us what transphobia is. Okay, listen, all right. There's a lot of people in my in my chat right now who are essentially saying, "Oh, well, Destiny is giving the take that calling out transphobia is transphobic." You heard it here, folks. Thank you, cis guy, for explaining what transphobia is.
First of all, whether you're cis or not, I think I'm going to give you better takes on what is transphobic than somebody like Blair White. So if you want to say that just being trans is like enough to give good takes on transphobia, she's got a whole YouTube channel of trans issues that you can listen to if you want better information, I guess. So I mean, like, I would obviously reject that as an ad hom.
Yeah,
I try to be like pretty sensitive towards like what is transphobic or not, but like you can't just say that every single thing is transphobic and then call it that. And then when anybody tries to say like, well, hold on, I don't know if that's true, be like, oh, well, you're just a cis person. Like I can call everybody transphobic, even other trans people. Like I think that's a pretty bullshit take.
yeah, but I mean, like the one. So here's like the thing that I'll say about it, right?
Yeah.
Usually, I don't consider being labeled as a trans medicalist to like. I've never like up until just recently, I would not consider that necessarily to be transphobic because usually whenever I levy it against, like I'm usually one to levy it against people. I'm usually the person in the position to like criticize trans medicalists because I usually disagree with them because usually they essentialize it down to like having dysphoria and like that's the only like that's the only criteria that's actually sufficient for being truly trans. I have lots of issues with that. I think it's not good, and so usually I will criticize those people. And so like I don't necessarily consider that most of the time to be transphobic.
Okay.
Here we have, I mean, like I also know what it's like to be labeled as a TERF, or like not as a TERF, for being labeled as a trans medicalist just for trying to define what trans is. And so I don't now Demon Mama and Mel, like they didn't do that with me. They in no way did that with me. So I can't, you know, like I can't speak to like them doing that in the past. I think that there's still good reason to say that like, listen, even if someone like, let's say that we have like let's just accept for the sake of the conversation that like both of them were acting transphobically or they were acting in the way which in some way harmed trans people in your community. That's probably an easier way to say like that's probably a much more sound take.
Well, harming trans people because they were trans people, I would consider that transphobic. If you don't want to label it that way, that's fine. But I want to be very clear that I disagree with your definition there, and that I would consider attacking trans people because they're trans people. I would consider that transphobic. It's okay that we disagree. I just want to be very clear there on how I feel about that.
Yeah. No, like I think that's a reasonable disagreement because like my definition of what it means to be transphobic is close. I've just never thought through that kind of an application.
Okay, sure.
And so like, even if we assume them to have in some way harmed trans people in your community, whether or not that's transphobic, I'm not sure if that necessarily means that that is a sufficient reason to just stop enforcing the rule, like the cross-platform bans against those people. If like people are not just criticizing them for being transphobic or causing harm, but rather are like harassing them for being trans, right? Like I think that there's a meaningful distinction between those two. Like one is still causing a harm that we probably do not want to allow in either of our communities.
Yeah, and again, and I understand what you're saying. I just want to be like very, very careful with how we're defining this. In terms of like allowing the harms in our communities, I already don't allow that, full stop. If somebody starts coming in and spamming transphobic comments about Demon Mama or any other trans person in my community, I ban it instantly, 100%. Like I'm never going to say like, hey guys, transphobia is okay against this trans person because we don't like them, because that's just transphobia. But I'm not going, but like enforcing off-platform stuff takes like a great deal of resources. Like it takes a lot of investigatory time and it's like a much, much higher burden. I don't think that I should be obligated to do that really for anybody. But like if I'm just trying to ban all types of a person's content from my community, like talking about like we're not like cross-platform, all that shit, we're not talking about this, we're not posting anymore, is usually like the direction that I go with it, because it's the easiest way to just like kind of like purge all of it from the community. But like I'm never at the point where I'm allowing like transphobic comments to be posted in any of my communities, be it my subreddit, my chats, or anything like that ever. That's never happening.
Okay.
Or I mean, it might happen, but if it does, it gets banned, right? That should never be allowed to happen.
All right. I mean, like that's certainly all right. Then, I mean, like in that case, it's certainly better. A lot of people are saying that like, so what did Demon Mama do in particular? Like, do you remember what Demon Mama did? Because a lot of people are saying that she didn't call anyone like so here. Someone saying,
I know that
think
Chaos is Mel and Demon Mama were like fighting together on Twitter. That's why I'm trying to be very. That's why I linked you a tweet from Chaos is Mel.
Oh, okay.
In terms of like the things that we're saying, yeah, so that I'm not like mixing the two up.
Yeah.
But I know that Demon Mama came out earlier. The tweet that Cass Mel was responding to was like implying that my whole community was like levying all these massively transphobic insults at her.
This is honestly why I don't interact with Destiny. Also, he has trans fans, but they're all true scum and trans med people. Okay, yeah, that's yikes.
Yeah,
no,
that's ultra yikes, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the equivalent of like having a debate on reparations, and like some Black creators community like disagrees with me. I'm like, oh, that whole chat is just all Uncle Toms. Every Black person there is like, that's a pretty like yikes take to give, in my opinion. That would be like a pretty whoa.
Right. No, I mean like I generally agree. Like that's pretty bad. And so like, okay, so that makes sense. I think that's reasonable. So what happened with so what happened exactly like with Demon Mama? Because I'm looking at one of Demon Mama's, I believe one of her admins in my chat, and they're saying that Demon Mama was speaking about Destiny's fans in general. She never called out Destiny's trans fans, or that this is what they said. Riley, you have to push back on this lie. Demon Mama never called his trans fans true scum. That was only Mel. So like, do you remember what happened with that?
I probably am associating these two together, and I'd have to remember everything we talked about in our conversations.
Right.
But I just remember that I had a very strong impression after both of them that I felt as though both of them were transphobic, and I wanted both of their contents completely banned from my community. But I have the right to do that. Like, there is no like, you have to accept their content. Like, if my impression, if somebody's going to have the impression of me as being transphobic, then I'm allowed to have the impression of anyone else I want as being transphobic. And the company that Demon Mama keeps, the way that she talks about these issues, and then like the other people that tweet and support her online, like, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable like resting with that assertion. It's possible that I could be wrong about that. Maybe I'll see something in this conversation or something in the future that leads me to feeling like maybe this assessment is incorrect and I have to change it, but I feel pretty comfortable like with that assertion.
Okay. So I mean, like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, you know, I'm not gonna like tell anyone who they should or shouldn't allow in their community. Like I banned Demon Mama from my community the other day. Like like basically immediately following what had happened. So I mean, like, you know, I get it. Sometimes like you as a creator have the right to be able to choose who you do and do not allow within your community. That's your right. Here, I guess I'm just wondering if there's like. So I mean, like, if you don't allow someone's content in your community, because they do something transphobic, but like here it's like a lesser degree of certainty. I mean, like, there's still like a degree of certainty, and like that, you know, like that's sufficient reason to perhaps not let them in the community. Like I can get that, but I mean, like, I'm not sure if that's worth not necessarily taking the same precautions to ensure that people in your community are not harming them in the same way that you would take with other people. Like just a feeling doesn't seem like a lot in terms of making that kind of a decision, you know?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, if I saw anything like super fucked up, there's a really good chance that it will happen, that they're going to be banned regardless, just because it's usually something, because like it's incredibly rare that you're going to have a person that wants to be transphobic against just one person. More likely is they're going to be transphobic against everybody.
Yeah.
It's just every time we've tried to like chase down this type of behavior off community, it's always ended up being like random Twitter accounts that have no affiliation with my community whatsoever. These people will be people that follow like Nick Fuentes and shit, that just follow me to like shit on my political takes. Like every time we've tried to hunt down this type of stuff, it just doesn't seem like it's coming from people in my community, or it's like a very new member and they just get banned or whatever. But yeah, so that's like the frustrating thing to me. So like I understand that, because I think if I can try to understand what's going on in your head right now, like the uncomfortableness that you're dealing with now is the idea that like Destiny's kind of making it like implicitly permissible to be transphobic against people online that he's had disagreements with. And I understand the feeling for that, but like, rather than that being the takeaway, the more takeaway that I want to focus on is just that like I would just rather cut my association with these people whatsoever, and removing the discussion about like transphobic like off-platform text, blah blah blah. It's just easier to just say we're done with all of this. Like we're not talking about any of this anymore, because I don't want posts coming up like related to these people and like generally I don't really want to give these people any more attention than they are already like hungry for. It's generally, yeah.
Right. No, I mean, I get that. My chat is very not happy with me right now. A lot of them are saying that you're lying, or some
lying about which thing?
Here.
About Demon Mama being transphobic or whatever?
Yeah, that's a lot of it. A lot of people are saying
I wish
that
I could remember
like
our conversation more. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like a lot of people are saying, I've never seen a single iota proof that Demon Mama is transphobic, and I had like a lot of upvotes and likes and whatnot. I
Oh,
stream
sure.
other
Yeah,
people's.
that's fine if they haven't. I've never seen a single shred of proof that I'm transphobic though, and a lot of them are engaging in that behavior right now of saying that Destiny is transphobic. So I don't care. Well,
Right, but I
that's
mean,
really
like with
mean
the
of me to
take
say
that,
because it's your community. Sorry, but
yeah,
yeah.
but I mean, like with the take that like in some way Demon Mama was transphobic.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll see it in this conversation, I guess. But yeah, I know for sure that Chaos is Mel person is, and I know for sure that those two are friends, and I know for sure that those two were bashing my community on Twitter. So like I'm pretty sure that if I were to engage in any type of behavior whatsoever, people very quickly will link me to any of those people. So like yeah, I'm comfortable like pairing these two up. But hey, you know what? That might be like a prior that I end up changing with more analysis in the future. We'll see. But I'm not
Yeah.
losing any sleep over it, I guess.
No, I mean I get that. I will say, all right, so like your friends. All right, hold on. So what I will say on this is like going into the conversation just as like the 2 cents, and I mean like you can draw your own conclusions, but like
Oh
as
my god.
oh what?
Can I? Okay, sorry, just real quick. Okay, because you're reading your chat now, so I don't feel as we're doing it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Trump said, or people feel justified being transphobic towards people their content creator dislikes. Trump just said, go peacefully to the Capitol, just like Destiny isn't telling people to be transphobic to DM and Mel. The idea, the reason why people are looking sideways at what Trump says is because all of Trump's rhetoric was basically uh, revolutionary or like inciting like a fucking revolution. Like that was all Trump was doing. The overwhelming majority of my trans content is like incredibly trans acceptant. Like if you go and look up like Destiny trans debate on YouTube, it's all going to be arguing against transphobes. So the idea that like I'm like implicitly endorsing this type of transphobic behavior because that's what everybody wants to do really is like just it is absolutely not true. If you go to my Discord or my fucking offline chat, like there are like I have a really big trans community in my I'm pretty sure I have a larger trans community in my community than I have a cis woman community in my community. Like there are a lot of trans people in my community
Sure.
for being so transphobic. And I know that theoretically you could have self-hating trans people or like I know there are ways around that like maybe on its own necessarily that's not really yeah, I don't like this idea that I'm like the secret transphobe and I finally just taken the leash off my community and set them on the trans community now to go and destroy them all like they really want to. Like I wholly reject that assertion. Not only a wholly reject, I think it's a ridiculous assertion. I don't think you're being honest with yourself if you say that. You either don't know who I am, you don't know who my community is, or you don't know like what I've been talking about for the past 5 years on my stream. Okay, sorry.
No, you're all good. Well, I mean, like, so I do want to elaborate on again. Like, I've heard just about all these
good.
arguments.
I'm sure you've heard a lot of
point.
stuff. You're not gonna bother me with anything you say. Don't worry. Go for it.
Okay, cool.
And also there's might gonna be some things that we end up like disagreeing on, which is fine too. I don't hold against you. Or I don't know if you're holding against me, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I don't mind having reasonable disagreements. So like basically, so going back to like the conversation with Demon Mama, the bullying people offline, you were like, yeah, I don't feel bad necessarily bullying people offline if they are people who are spreading bad opinions who we probably don't want online, and some of them may be trans. Like that's essentially your argument, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that like a lot of people probably are still going to have like an issue with that insofar as like do you think that's justifiable? Like let's assume that we have like terrible people online. Let's assume that we have like the worst people, you know, you can imagine online giving whatever dog shit takes. They're like the worst, constantly spreading transphobia or racism or whatever. Like, is it still ethical? I'm wondering. Like, is it still ethical? Like, even with those worst people, to try and bully them offline?
I mean, I guess so. When I say bully, I don't mean like dox somebody and like send them death threats or stuff like that. I don't know if that's how people take it. But in terms of like being like ultra critical of their positions or like making fun of them or calling them stupid or you know stuff like that, yeah, I think that's totally fair. I'd apply the same standard that I do to like Nazis or whatever. Like I make fun of like is it Eric Stryker, James Alsop, Nick Fuentes, like, yeah, I relentlessly bully the fuck out of these people, of course, because I think they have dog shit takes that are like harmful to like other people. And if they got offline because they got bullied too much, then like that's fine. But I guess I could be more careful with the word bully, because I don't necessarily mean like sending death threats to people or whatever.
Right. No, I mean like, and I get that, because like just from what I know of you, like, I know that you're not going to be someone who like goes out and doxes people or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess that like my concern here, because I think most of the time. And I think that, like, unironically arguing for people bullying off the internet, well, hold on. I mean, like, I disagree with that. But I mean, like, the reason I disagree is because I think that when it comes to, like, trans people or people minority, like, this is the same reason why I advocate for cis people to talk about trans issues, right? Is because when you are a cis person operating in online spaces, there are a lot of conversations that you are able to engage in naturally that are a lot that you don't have the same risk of harm that someone else who that like the implications of that conversation may directly impact, right? Like it is difficult for me to debate turfs, and I do it anyway because I don't know, I'll probably talk to my therapist about that someday. But like there
I
is a
1,000,000% agree.
yeah.
This is why I'm really careful not to like tone police like people that discuss issues. Like if you're a cis person and you're getting incredibly emotional discussing trans issues, I think that's a little silly. But if you're a trans person and you're discussing these issues, I mean, like for me, like I said earlier, like it's technically just a debate topic for me, but for other people, this is like their lived experience, and it can be really hard to divorce like the lived reality of like the implications of what you're saying versus just having a debate about it, right? I empathize with that hardcore, or I understand that a lot. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, like, if we want to flip that around, right? Like, the reason why is because, like, there are certain conversations that just by virtue of the fact that you are part of a group, that you're going to be exposed to certain types of harm that are unique to you by virtue of belonging to that category, right? And so, like, when we're
Can you expand on that, or what do you mean by that? Say that again.
yeah. So I mean, like if you are trans, just by virtue of being trans, you are going to be at certain types of risk that are unique to you by virtue of the fact that you're trans, that are not going to be like that you would not have to worry about otherwise if you were not trans, if you were cis, right?
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
And so like when we're talking about engaging in like the bullying people off the internet rhetoric, right? Or like making fun of people, right? Like I can get behind I can get behind dunking on people. I mean, like on my Twitter, I do a lot of things. Like if I see like someone with a really bad take, usually my go-to is to like dunk on them, right? Like good fun, gets lots of likes, lots of engagement. Everyone likes, you know, free marketplace of ideas, yada, yada, yada. And so, hot take, this is why you and Demon Mama got such a... Wait, what? Hold on. I don't understand this take. Sorry, I'm looking at my chat. But anyway, so...
You're fine.
God. But anyway, so... Fuck, where was my line of thought? I just got completely derailed. So if you're a trans
You're
person...
talking about like bullying and the struggles that you face, yeah.
Yeah, on Twitter. All right, so when I do that, I'm engaging in, you know, like obviously I'm engaging in behavior that people could probably broadly define as bullying, right? Or if you like, I think that it would be reasonable for someone to define that as bullying, right? Or making fun of someone for having a bad opinion.
Yeah, sure.
I think that when you A, are a substantively large content creator, and B, when you are talking about someone who comes from a background which is inherently more likely to experience the type of harm like what we had talked about, that just by virtue of engaging with someone who belongs to that category of group, there is a inherent higher risk and of that person incurring a different kind of harm unique to that person that's different from other types of people that you engage with. And because of that they warrant like additional consideration in how you interact with them, right?
So this is really hard. Okay, my brain is going to different places. So the first thing I would say to this is that like one of the reasons why so let's start with the positive. On its face, I would agree with this, that different types of people are subject to different pressures and things online, and we probably shouldn't treat every single person the same. Like we should probably be respectful of like the classes they come from or the backgrounds they come from, that might be something that we would want to take into consideration. I think I agree with that on its face. The only problem that I have would be that like in practice, that would essentially mean I'm never communicating with any of those people ever. So the issue that I have with Demon Mama is that Demon Mama basically markets herself as like Vosh Light or Destiny Light, or actually Destiny 2.0 or Vosh 2.0, because she's even more like hardcore sometimes in the ways that she does her argumentation. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, I do that. But if I'm going to have somebody that is going to come at me at that level, but I have to play with like kids gloves because of like the class they're from or because of the minority system, like I'm just at that point, like my new rules are okay, well, I'm not doing any more debates with trans people. I can't do it because I'm too worried that like, well, it's funny because this is actually what happens, unfortunately. Any single time I debate a trans person, I'm going to get called transphobic, even if I just disagree with them, even if it has nothing to do with trans issues. It's going to happen every time. And to be that's actually what has happened, which is really unfortunate. So like, for instance, I used to shit on philosophy tube a million times because I hate all of her content, all of her, everything she says about philosophy, everything she says about economics. I hate it all. I think it's all garbage content. But after she came out, now all of a sudden I'm transphobic for it. And it's like, the fuck? And yeah, so on one end, and it might be that there's not like a good solution to this, and we both fall on different sides of like where we want to be more cautious to. It feels like, because of the type of content I do, which is more adversarial for sure, that if I was to take the logical extension of like, well, we need to be more considerate of certain types of people's backgrounds, I just have to stop engaging with people that are going to go really hard from those backgrounds, and then just full stop. So like, there would still be certain trans people that I could engage with because most trans people are capable of having like reasonable, like level-headed discussions. But if it's anybody that has like a debate board reputation, I would literally have to say, like, if Demon Mama must be like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to debate you on my stream because you're trans. Like, I'm just not going to do it. Sorry. Like, and that feels like a little bit, I'm not sure. Yeah, go for it. Thoughts.
I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I have some thoughts. So, I mean, like, I understand that concern. I think that there may be ways to be able to address that concern without necessarily saying like, oh, we have to cut it off cold turkey, right? Like, the first thing that comes to my mind is possibly like, so when you have like conversations with people who come from more vulnerable backgrounds or more vulnerable like classes or whatever you want to say, maybe have like some kind of like, I don't know, like maybe like a private conversation or something. Like, it doesn't have to be super formal, but like some sort of like waiver, right? Like, hey, like, you know, maybe talk to them like, hey, listen, you know, I'm a larger content creator. I recognize that you come from a background, which means that just by virtue of being exposed with me in the public eye, that there is a higher likelihood that you may incur some kind of hate. I've taken every reasonable step that I can to try and prevent that from happening. But just just by virtue of the fact that like I am a large content creator, there is a risk that could happen. And so maybe getting like some form of consent, just so that they understand that risk, could be like a reasonable solution in that instance. But like otherwise,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I 1,000,000% agree with that. Usually, if there's somebody that I feel like, so do you know who Merrick is?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Yeah. So I disagree with her on a lot of things.
Okay.
But if she ever wants to like settle a disagreement or something like offline because of the conversations we have or whatever, I'm glad to do stuff like that. If they feel like the public backlash or whatever is too much. The only difference that I'm talking about is that I like everything that you're talking about is not a problem for 95% of people.
Sure.
The issue that I have is with somebody that wants to go really fucking hard on me.
Yeah.
And then I have to play like, I don't know how I'm supposed to deal with those. Like, there's a like this thought I would never have when talking to you, because you're not going to sit here and like scream at me or make stupid faces at me or like appeal to like whatever. It's like, this isn't like anything that we, if people like are harassing you or being shitty, I just ban them. It's easy. That doesn't even have anything to do with being trans. It just has to do with being like a person in a chat with everything. But like, if I'm going to start dealing with like debate lords, which I say that endearingly and insultingly, because I am a debate lord, of course.
Sure, I got you.
But if I'm going to start dealing with like debate lords, like, I mean, like, I can say, I guess, like, I can give notice that, like, yeah, people are going to be shitty or whatever. I feel like if I take this a step further, well, hold on. Do I want to? No, hold on. I won't do that. Yeah, I guess, like, I'm just, it's hard when somebody wants to go really hard on me, regardless of any conversations we have about, like, consent or whatever, in terms of, like, hey, this might happen. It's really hard when somebody wants to go really, really, really hard on me. And then, like, even if I say nothing transphobic against them at all, which I wouldn't imagine I ever would, like, I still get labeled as transphobic, and then my community gets labeled as transphobic, and then all my community trans people are labeled as true scum. Like, I don't know, that's just shitty. But yeah, I can meet you halfway in that, like, I can try to make people aware, I guess, like, hey, like, these conversations could get really messy. Although, like, I would like to iterate or reiterate and be very clear, because a lot of people give me ideas like this that, like, these are things that I've been doing for years. Like, and almost every friend I deal with or talk to, like, usually, I might not do this every single day, but I try, like, almost always we'll have like an off stream, like, even just text and be like, hey, is there anything you don't want to talk about or anything that makes you feel comfortable, just let me know. Or like, hey, like, you know, if we talk about these certain things, like, there might be like a lot of public pushback, or like, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, these are things that I try to make people aware of, because a lot of people aren't aware that they could happen, you know, at the beginning of these conversations. And then unfortunately, sorry, last thing, geez, I'm really sorry. Unfortunately, for the last thing is, a lot of people will agree to it, and then later on they'll regret it because they don't actually realize what it's like. So I've had people that are like, oh yeah, this is fine, no problem. And it's their first time. And then afterwards they're like, holy fuck, what the fuck? This is crazy. Like, what did you put me through? Why the fuck did you do this to me? And it's like, sorry, fuck yeah, like it's almost impossible to get consent there because they have no idea what they're signing up for, you know?
Right. Well, I
Sorry,
mean,
okay, that was a lot.
no, you're all good. I mean, like, I understand that. Like, I think it is, like, I think that you're in a frustrating situation there because, like, I can totally understand that. Like, if someone is, like, basically sitting there calling you, you're a terrible person, you're fascist, you're a transphobe, you're a Nazi, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like, it can be very difficult to look at that person and be like, okay, I have to treat this person with kid gloves, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think that, like, it's still, so, like, there's a couple things, right?
Yeah.
I think that, like, well, let me ask you if you, like, agree with this idea. Do you agree with the idea that, like, basically, as a consequence of being, like, a larger content creator, that you might have, like, a larger onus of responsibility to how you handle those kinds of situations than, like, people who don't come from that kind of background, right? Like, people who are smarter than you or similar, or,
To
like,
some
yeah.
extent, it's really, really, really hard. I agree with you to some extent, but it's like, did you ever play a game called Final Fantasy Tactics?
No, I didn't.
There was a stat called faith in that game, and the higher the faith you had, the more cure spells would heal you, but also the more attack spells would damage you. So it was like a double-edged stat.
Okay.
As a large content creator, I have the ability to deal more damage to anybody that I interact with, but that person also has the ability to rally a lot of communities against me. So on one end, I'm incredibly sympathetic towards people that are like, hey, you've got a huge community, dude. Like, you got to chill. Like, you can like bury these people. It's not fair. And like, I agree with that for sure. But when I get into any minor disagreement with a trans person, or somebody that starts to label me transphobic, the entire fucking internet will ride on the backs of that criticism and come at me. And it's like, it's very frustrating to try to deal with both ends of that, where it's like, I got to be very gentle to you because I can do a lot of damage to you, but like, this person can rally like this happens all the time, where, and it's almost comical at this point, where if I get into a disagreement with some online creator, whether they're a lefty or whatever, somebody calling transphobic, all of the people will start to come out of the woodwork, and it's like, oh yeah, Destiny's fucking horrible, blah blah blah, and like out of nowhere, these people that I interacted with like a year ago are like starting to pile on, and it's like, Jesus. So like, I do understand that I have like an added responsibility there to be more I guess responsible with how I wield my audience, which I agree, and I wholeheartedly accept that more than I feel most other content creators do, even in these spaces, right? Like, I would never use an excuse like where Vosh is just saying like oh well, I told them, if they want to go and report this stuff or do all this stuff off platform, like that's fine. I just don't want to see it in my room, right? I go way harder than any other content creator in enforcing like these types of behaviors. But I feel like people also don't take into consideration like that every single time they levy some insult against me, they're also mobilizing like a huge group on the internet that's going to come out with these arguments and then use them against me forever, and then like shit on me and attack me in my community, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. No, I mean, I can understand that.
Mhm.
I guess that, like, so there's like a couple thoughts, right? The first is, I'm looking at my chat, and without saying specifics, a lot of people are like, oh, look at Destiny, crying, boo-hoo, crocodile tears. I'm so sorry that you suffer criticism for the things that you do. And I'm going to be the
Wait,
one to
what?
say, well, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't want, like, I'm inclined to, like, I know what your response is going to be. And I mean, like, I'll be the one to say that, like, to some extent, I do disagree with that. Like, it's the same reason that, like, I don't know, like, like, now I'm at the point in my life where I know a lot of larger content creators, or I'm getting to know a lot. And without getting into the specifics, like, I did think before I started doing this that, like, like, someone who's like small and individualistic on the internet can't have like a substantive impact on someone who has, like, a giant following online. It's absolutely not true.
Yeah.
Like, I wholeheartedly disagree with the idea that, like, you as an individual, like, just a
And also,
person.
like, I can deal with criticism. I deal with a ton of criticism, like, which is fine. I have no problem dealing with criticism. Like, I think that most of the things that I've learned have come from like confrontations with other people, which is fine. But like, calling somebody transphobic, that's not a criticism. And most people aren't in the business of criticism, unfortunately, anymore. Most people are in the business of trying to get you canceled everywhere. So like revoking your income streams or getting you banned off of platforms. Like, that's not criticism, right? This is just like internet, I guess, like brigading or whatever, or internet like offensive attacks. Like, it has nothing to do with criticism. So whoever said that, fuck that person. Okay, it has nothing to do with, like, I don't think it's fair to be like, you're a fascist, you're transphobic, you're homophobic. It's like, whoa, hold on, this is not fair. oh, now you can't deal with criticism. Like, what the fuck? Of course I deal with criticism. I deal with more criticism than any of you have ever dealt with in your entire lives, unironically, from so many different corners of the internet. So like to pretend that I can't deal with criticism just 'cause I'm not okay with like a huge mass of people coming out labeling me as like a fascist, transphobe, homophobic, hating person. Like I reject that assertion wholeheartedly.
Yeah, so I mean, like, no, I do tend to agree with that idea. Now, the one thing that I do want to like,
Mhm.
push back a little bit on, as far as like the ideas that we were discussing earlier, is that like while, like I do think that there can be like a real harm that people can do. I think that
Mhm.
so like I don't know. It's hard to know exactly like whether or not that harm is like proportionate. I mean, like obviously our experiences are only our own. It's hard to be able to like measure the amount of harm that like someone does to us versus the harm that we do to other people. Like
Mhm.
measuring the amount of harm can get really messy.
Yeah,
Um,
it's impossible, of course.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, like, I think that for a couple reasons, like even if we are assuming that like another person is like actively causing harm
Mhm.
to a larger content creator and that harm is real, like even if we assume that to be true, the larger content creator probably wants to take every reasonable, like not every single step, like not like, we don't want to like, anytime they try doing anything that we're just like, oh, that's not good enough. I would say that like, we want to make sure that they take every reasonable step, like something that like most people would broadly expect for someone to do.
Yeah, because a lot
um
of people will take what I'm saying and use it as an excuse when there's like when somebody posts like, "This is the weekly trans hate thread," and someone's like, "Well, I can't control my community at all. Like, what am I supposed to do?" Yeah, like I disagree with people that'll go that far, of course.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I would like to think that I'm on the other end of being like overly reasonable and trying to like limit hate against other people. And again, like I know that some people like just don't understand that, but like, man, I wish that people would I wish people would deal with other communities on the internet to get an idea of like what the norm is. Because like I feel like sometimes people will perceive any attacks whatsoever as being like this is an ultra transphobic community. But if they got into like an argument with like XQC or Asmongold or Trend or any other like large streamer on Twitch, holy fuck, it's another world out there. Like you will just see like blatant transphobic shit just fucking flying in Twitch chats. Like it's crazy. It's not even close to like what people I guess are assuming is like this community is the most transphobic on Twitter. Like it's not even close to that level of what people think it is. Not to say that like any amount of like hatred or transphobic comments or whatever are okay or acceptable, but just the idea that like I'm not working like really hard to try to regulate or to stop any of it is like yeah, I reject that.
Right, but I mean like no, and like I hear that, but I mean like, and a
Mhm.
lot of people are in my chat right now are pointing out that like, so basically, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Trans
Yeah.
people, inherent risk, more likely to incur certain types of harm, all that. And so like one person pointed out Destiny, like in all caps, Destiny
Mhm.
literally called Dima Mama a subhuman piece of trash. Oh shit, of shit, Riley, why are you being so charitable? And a lot of people upvoted that. So like there's this broad idea that like basically, and I think that like to try and like interpret this through the lens of like what we've been talking about, right?
Okay.
Essentially, I think that like basically people are taking the stance that like because you are a larger person, and because a lot of people are going to say that like there's also an issue of like that wasn't called for, that wasn't deserved. I'm not sure about that. I
Sure.
don't know what
Just
the
real quick on that in particular.
okay.
I've like worked really hard to edit out like basically every targeted insult that I can from my vocabulary, such that we like trying to make fun of people for being fat anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think for the most part, I've completely eliminated like calling people retarded or whatever. But like obviously, I still get mad at people, and I'm still like, it's like subhuman seemed like a good like this doesn't target like any particular group of people. Like it's just like oh you're a subhuman piece of shit. Now people are starting to point out that's like well maybe this makes you sound like a Nazi. Blah blah. I was like okay fine. Like maybe in like a month or two, I'm not calling people subhuman anymore. But this isn't like a comment that I specifically reserve for trans people. I call anybody this weird. This is just like my go-to, like fuck you, you subhuman fuck. But like maybe in the future, maybe that changes to just like this like worthless piece of shit. But I feel like at that point, people are gonna say that again, like oh, like a trans person is worth nothing, like oh, they're worthless destiny. Like I feel like sometimes it's hard to disaggregate. Like are people telling me that like you're being like problematic because it's transphobic, or do people just want me to be nice to people? Because like I'm not going to because I'm not gonna that's not gonna happen. We're
A
like
lot of people
oh,
are
okay,
getting
well I'm just
very
gonna
mad. Well, I mean, like
what yeah
a lot of people are getting very very mad at you saying like the R slur, or
yeah of course yeah,
yeah,
which is something that like I've managed to cut out from my vocabulary I think pretty
yeah. But I mean, like, a lot of people hold on, actually, like, I don't know, so like, what's your position on like saying that? Because like, I generally think that like it is, I don't know what your position is, I haven't followed like
Mhm.
this aspect of your community. I generally take it to be ableist. I try to cut out language which goes like, and I mean, like,
Yeah,
I
that's
like, this
generally
is
what I
hard.
basically my position. Or sorry, finish. I
Or
just cut you off. God.
no, you're all good. I mean, like, basically, I try my best to cut out language which impugns someone mentally. Because as I understand it, like, people have made the argument to me, and I've tried to even adopt this.
Mhm.
That like calling someone stupid is ableist, and the argument there
Yeah.
being like, well, the argument there being that essentially, if like any attempt to impugn someone like by saying that they have some sort of mental defect, is therefore playing into like ableist stereotypes. Like, that's the argument that I've heard, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if I'll get dragged to that extreme of it, but like I feel like at some point it's like you're not like allowed to say like you're like this take is like you're delusional for
Right.
believing that
Well, I mean,
like black people are substantially different than white people. And it's like at some point I can't tell if people's arguments are like these are words that we should avoid for good reasons versus like we should just stop being mean to anybody. And it's like one of these I can do, one of these I'm probably not. I'm not just gonna stop being mean to everybody. Like that's just it's not entertaining to me.
yeah. No, I mean,
And I
like,
don't think it's like necessarily like immoral to like be mean
right.
to somebody.
But I
Yeah.
mean, like, going back to the yeah, but I mean, like, bringing this back in. So I think that like when we're talking about how to treat people in these situations, I guess that the main thing is that like when you use these kind of comments against people, like, obviously
Mhm.
it has like they have an intended, um, oh, I'm trying to think. They have an intended negative effect, right? Like, they're supposed to impugn the person. Like, you are insulting the
Yeah, of
person.
course. Mhm.
Like, it's supposed to have a negative effect. I
Mhm.
think that the point is that like when you use that against someone from a minority background, there's a risk that like that negative effect is going to be magnified. And I think that we talked about this earlier a little bit.
Sure. But like at this point, like, do you just is it immoral or unethical to just impugn anyone? Should you just like be nice to everybody? Is that like
Uh,
the that sounds a little reductionist, but that
mhm.
almost feels like what like the ultimate argument is like just stop being mean to people.
I don't think that that's necessarily it. I think that's like taking it like to an extreme. I think that's like taking the problem that we're talking about and like taking it to an extreme, right? I think that like what's probably a realistic thing to do. A lot of people
Mhm.
are saying dehumanize a person. Like, my admin just added me saying dehumanizing a person is like a great way to tell your chat that they don't deserve human rights. A lot of people are saying like dehumanizing or saying that someone is subhuman is dehumanizing them and is terrible.
Yeah, but then like I feel like we could walk to where like what you were saying in terms of like is calling somebody like a fucking moron? Is that like do we actually start to get into ableist territory there if we've cut away everything else? Like, like is your intelligence a reflection of your class, your educational background, which can be a function of your class? Like, are like would calling somebody like delusional or crazy is that kind of like a ableist comment because of like mental illness? Like,
So a lot of people, yeah. So I'm looking at my chat right now. So a lot of people are
mhm.
basically saying like, this is very ableist. This is very bad. This is very terrible. Um, that's a dumb shit take is totally fine. All right. So that's what my admin said. So basically, like, where I'm coming at with this, because I mean, like, the weird thing about this with me is that like a lot of these people, I know that they inhabit like your community, Vosh's community, other similar like debatey types of communities.
Mhm.
And so like I know that most of them have seen people use these kind of insults against other people who they don't like, and it's been completely fine for a lot of it. So I don't think that it's a problem of using the insults generally. It's probably better to cut back certain insults if they appeal to like certain like for example like ableism. It's probably better to try and cut back as much as is reasonably possible. However
For
much,
sure, 100%, which
yeah.
is which I was what I've tried to do more or less.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I
Mhm.
think that like usually I try to have like reasonability in my mind. You're gonna hear that word a
Mhm.
lot in the video.
Mhm. I try
Um,
to think of like when I think of like basically like my kind of like golden rule for insults is I try to think like if I'm insulting somebody, I want to use an insult that's not going to target like some group of people or somebody that has that trait that I would consider to be like negative. Or I'm sorry, for the trait itself to not be negative, to feel like attacked by it. So for instance, calling somebody retarded as an insult, I think that that fails that test because there might be somebody listening that is legitimately like a good person, but they like have some sort of mental disability. And it's like, why would you want to have that person be included in that attack, right? Or calling somebody like you fat piece of shit as an insult. Well, there might be like an overweight person that's listening that like isn't a piece of shit, and now you're just like attacking them for no reason. So I kind of think of like what's like a general insult that you can use that doesn't like impugn certain groups of people that would be targeted for no reason, and then those are the ones that I try to stick to basically.
yeah. No, and I think that no, and I think
Mhm.
that's like I think I generally agree with that. A lot of people are pushing back at me in my chat about this, but I mean like
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, well, I mean, this is a really like I mean, essentially a lot of people what I'm interpreting from this, because a lot of people are getting upset about the idea of insulting someone, like in general.
Exactly, and that's yeah,
Um,
but that's a different conversation, and I think that there might be a place for that conversation, but like you have to approach it honestly first. If somebody wants to have an argument with me over like, I think that we need to stop insulting people on the internet. Okay, sure, but like start there. Don't start with like this insult using is bad. This insult using is bad. This it's like, well, no, hold on. It sounds like your problem is just me insulting people. Like, let's talk about that concept rather than trying to dig out every individual word. Yeah.
yeah, and so like but I think that like the reason, because I'm trying to be charitable to my community right now, because usually like
Mhm.
usually we're on basically we're on the same level, and I think that the reason why, and this tends to be where I'm at, is that because using these kind of insults, like using
Mhm.
these kind of insults against like trans people in particular, but like generally minority people who are at a higher risk of being subjected to certain forms of harm,
Mhm.
that there's a higher likelihood in that of causing harm to that person, aside from just regularly impugning someone, especially impugning someone that your chat's right like normally not going to like. And so I
Mhm.
think that in that case, like even if you are taking reasonable steps, that there's like a
Mhm.
higher indicia, like you just need to have like a
Yeah.
higher indicia of consideration there, whatever that
Yeah.
is, right? Like, you
I
know.
agree. I understand what you're saying. So we're kind of circling this topic now because now my response again is going to be that like I understand what you're saying, but for like the more aggressive forms of those people, like the rule would literally be no aggressive people of that minority status. So if somebody wants to come on and get in a heated debate, they can only be a white cis male. I'm no longer doing
Mhm.
heated debates with black people, no longer doing heated debates with trans people, because I think that that minority status makes them incapable of having that debate without experiencing a disproportionate amount of harm. That
Well,
which that the end of that seems pretty yeah I don't know
you could
not
do like
good.
the waiver idea. I mean, with those people, like basically just approach those people beforehand and like DMs and be like, hey, listen, I know things are spicy right now. I know that you've said a lot of things, or I've said a lot of things, or whatever, right? Just be
Mhm.
like, listen, a lot of things have been said, and just be like, regardless of all that, I just need to make explicitly clear to you right now that if you talk to
Mhm.
me, if you engage with me, like even despite me taking every reasonable effort to try and
Mhm.
mitigate whatever harm may come your way as a consequence, you are
Mhm.
in a particular situation where there is a higher likelihood
Mhm.
of you getting harmed despite my best efforts. And so you just need to be aware of that if this happens,
Mhm.
that even if I end up banning people in my community who end up causing harm to you, that other people may still in some way cause you a harm. Like you just
For
need to
sure.
be.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. But I think, like I said, I feel like I largely like I would try to do that. That's why I messaged you before, like, because I don't really need your permission to go over your
Mhm.
YouTube video, right? And it's already public, so I
Yeah.
could do it even if you didn't want me to. But like, I would extend that courtesy to you because I think you're 100% a person that deserves that. 1,000,000%. Yeah. Yeah. I try to like keep that in mind with people. I guess the only thing that we disagree on, and honestly, I think more people, even in my community, would probably side with you over this. Is just like I have a very big like if somebody throws down the gloves with me and they start going hard, like I'm usually just gonna return fire. Some people don't like that aspect of me. Even in my community, there are people who don't like that aspect, and I understand that. But like if somebody is like making a good faith effort to have a discussion, even if we have like a heated disagreement, like I usually try pretty hard to keep my community in line on my platform and off my platform, and I try to make them aware of that. I can try to do that even more in the future, but yeah, I mean, I agree that this is good behavior to have for sure.
Okay.
Hmm.
So yeah, I
And I
mean,
hate that like it's really sad to me like when I see comments so like this person in your Discord now because this is where the real chat is I see can't wait for a trans woman to make him mad enough to say okay full on transphobia is allowed on all of my platforms. Like when people say stuff like that, I don't know if they haven't heard anything I've said at all, if they're incapable of following the conversation, or if they're just so blinded by their hatred of me or blinded by their obsessive love of another content creator that that's like the stuff that they're saying because it's like it misses the mark so much on on everything that I've talked about. It's like pretty unfortunate, I think. But
okay, hold on. So
mhm.
so now someone's asking me. So wait, did you say that
Mhm.
someone isn't human and you hope they die? My admin, a lot of people are like throwing a lot of criticisms of you at me to bring up, but that one because my admin brought it up.
It's possible. I don't know. In terms of like actually making death threats to somebody, no. But in terms of like, I hope this person like fucking disappears from the internet forever, or fucking this person like, yeah, I've said stuff like that against like all sorts of people. But I don't think I'm like making death threats at anybody. I'd have to look at like people, but I'm just like we're gonna kill this person or whatever. Like, oh, somebody. So people in my church saying, I hope her internet career dies. It's possible. Yeah, I'm sure I've said
Wait,
that. Sure.
wait, mine.
No, no, in response to Demon Mama.
Oh wait, Demon Mama's career dies.
Yeah, I'm sure I've said something like that before. So if somebody wants to find the exact quote, they can.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, because that's something that someone brought up to me. Literally, RGR, you're defending a castle. All right, hold on. A lot of people are saying that I'm defending a castle at the cost of the townsfolk. Like, right now,
Wait, what is the castle? Am I a castle?
no, I think that. Well, I mean, I don't know. Yesterday, the argument, like putting up the video, was the castle. My argument was the castle. The castle has been a lot of things. That someone's
Oh
calling
wait,
me
are
a
they doing like the Mott and Bailey thing? They're
no, I mean,
accusing you
like,
of doing that?
I don't think it's a Mountain Bailey. So basically, so right now, essentially, the argument is that because, um, like, there's a lot of things here. So essentially, the argument right now at this moment is because I am taking the actions that I am right now, whether it's uploading the video, whether it was to have the debate to begin with, whether it was to go through the debate once it had started, whether it was talking to you, like basically people are making the argument that like because I chose these decisions, there is some kind of harm that I am contributing to in my community as a consequence of those actions. Basically as a cost, right? Like I am choosing to go through with my actions at the cost of my own community, right? People are saying that my
Oh
community is
sure.
hurting. Demon Mama's community is hurting. I don't know. I had a conversation with my admins earlier. Just saying that he hopes people die, drives his community to send death threats seems reasonable to me. Okay, listen.
Mhm.
I like this is hard. Like it's a hard situation because like several things. The first comment
Mhm.
that I have to make is that like chat, I'm speaking to my chat. Um like this is weird to me because this is the same way that you reacted yesterday during the Demon Mama stream. Like as I was having the conversation and as I was making arguments I had made time and time again before and you'd never had a problem with. And then I made the same arguments against someone that you liked and now everyone was getting mad over it.
Oh
Like
man, I'm
like
not gonna lie. This has literally been my life for the past like 3 years. What people call the lefty arc has been more or less that there are certain positions that I take that I hold to be true, and I've made the arguments time and time and time again. But when I levy those arguments at content creators that people like, all of a sudden they become completely and totally and wildly impermissible. This is obviously personal, and you have to figure this out for yourself. And maybe every online politics person learns this. There are going to be a lot of people that follow you, and even today, this is true of my community. There are going to be a lot of people that follow you because they like your applied positions at the end, and they could give a fuck less about whatever principles those stem from. And if you start applying them towards things that they do, that they like, if you start applying negative criticisms that you've had against people they don't like to people they do like, they'll have a huge problem with that. And then,
okay.
yeah, it's frustrating, but like I've dealt with this a lot. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, and that's probably another reason why there's the similarities. Also, someone is saying, hold on, RGR, this is so obtuse, Riley. Almost everyone agrees with your take. No, they don't. People are literally calling me, like, in the comments today, I was going through and people are calling me transmedicalist. That is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
It's not about your takes. It's about how you handled the conversation with an ally. Listen, like, I don't know. This is a really... So basically, there's another conversation, right? A lot of people think that basically I didn't handle the conversation ethically with Demon Mama. That I
Mhm.
should have been nicer to her. That I should have been. That I should have ended it early.
Mhm.
People in your comments do not equal your own Discord community. That's absolutely not true.
People will say that a lot on Reddit. It's funny because like people will say this now, but we'll use different arguments against Reddit. Because like sometimes on a subreddit, I'll go and I'll be like, "Wow, this subreddit is insanely fucking homophobic. Like these guys bash people." And then like you know what the response is, right? You know what those subreddits always say? What their main
No.
response is well actually there are thousands of people here. Okay, one comment is not reflective of the entire subreddit. People will say that, ignoring the fact that there are like mass upvoted comments that are like either homophobic or hateful as fuck. And it's like, okay, yeah, people will do that also where they're like, just comments on your YouTube don't represent your entire community, but they'll ignore the fact that you're getting like multiple upvoted comments on like your YouTube, Reddit, your chat, your Discord. It's like, okay, sure, we can pretend that, but like we all know that's not true. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm yeah.
No, you're
I
right. But
hear
I mean,
these same things
basically,
wheeled out of time.
yeah. So basically, what happened was, so to go back to the ally bit, because I want to, like, I'm going to respond. Like, if people
Mhm.
make the arguments, like, I'm going to respond to them. I say that for like an hour out of the 3 hours is just me arguing with my community, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Sure.
yeah. No, I mean, I care about this, right? Like, I care about actually responding to the arguments that my community makes. You know, like I genuinely care. Even though apparently the impression I'm getting from my chat right now is that a lot of people don't seem to believe that. And I don't know what I need to do to believe, but I can only speak with my actions. But anyway, so like with how I handled myself in the debate, and you can watch and you can draw your own conclusions. You're a rational, free-thinking individual. And I mean, like my impression walking out of that conversation was that I did absolutely everything that I could to handle it, to try and stay as level-headed as possible, and literally, I never ad hommed, or to the best of my memory, I never ad hommed or attacked her personally. She attacked me personally. I only raised my voice like once and a couple times, and she impugned me for being angry and for constantly interrupting her.
Yeah. Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, it's like essentially people are trying to say that like I mishandled the situation when I cannot think. Like she tried to leave at least 3 times though. Debates have to be consensual. I told her listen, if she wanted to leave, she could hang up the call. If she wanted to leave, she could have just hung up the call. I hung up the call. All right. If she wanted to leave, then she could have left at any fucking time. All right. I refuse to believe that argument. And then beyond that, God, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, no, I think that like I am of the genuine belief that at every point of the conversation that I handled myself above and beyond what I could have, like as mean as I could have been in the situation. And so it's weird that a lot of people are saying, oh, well, you mishandled for yourself for being in a conversation with an ally, when essentially I don't know how I could have handled it better given the way that she was treating me.
Sure.
You know?
And it also sucks that like criticism on the internet is never like proportional, right? Like if the internet dealt with if the internet levied criticism, if teachers levied criticism the same way that the internet does, you could like turn in a math assignment and get like a 93% on it, and the teacher would be like, you total fucking ape. What kind of stupid fuck would miss this question? I don't know if you know any math at all. You're unbelievably fucking stupid. Like, this is like where it might be like the honest criticism should be like, hey, like there's a part of the combo you could have handled better. People will like go to like the ends of the earth to like crucify you for a mistake, which is just another unfortunate thing. Like people are just like are very, very, very hyperbolic on the internet when it comes to stuff like this too, which is frustrating, but.
Yeah, hold on. Riley, Demon Mama considered... Hold on, I want to read this because this is one from one of Demon Mama's admins. Riley, Demon Mama considered you an ally and wasn't willing to kick you off the stream. She asked you 3 times to please pause the conversation. Every time you I barreled her over. I barreled over her, saying how important it was that she had to talk to you right then. If you take, like, all right, Destiny, if you watch that and you think that I barreled over her, then you're free to draw that conclusion. I think that's absolutely an uncharitable read of what that was. I think that she was being patronizing. My read of the situation is that she was constantly, throughout the entirety of the conversation, being patronizing to me, and I wanted to continue it because I was genuinely, like, at the beginning, I was genuinely concerned. I mean, like, this is actually probably true for the entire conversation. I was genuinely concerned because there was a glaring problem with what she was saying, and I still genuinely believe this, like, as a public figure, if she's going to go around making arguments and people are going to rely on those same arguments, then she has an onus to make sure that she's not spreading misinformation.
Valid and sound.
Yeah. And so no, like if people want to read that, like, do you think maybe your read of it is biased towards you? I mean, like, if you're like, listen, if people are able, like, I have my own bias. If you're able to read that, if you're able to watch that video, and that's the impression that you got, that I was like holding her hostage unironically, then I don't know what to tell you. You literally told her that the conversation was over when she was not over when she tried to regress. When I say the conversation was not over, the best of my memory, those words did not come out of my mouth. The only way that conversation was going to end was on your terms. How can you possibly say that all she had to do was leave at RGR? She could have literally hung up the call. She could have pressed hang up. At RGR, D Mama wanted to end it amicably. She said she wanted to end the call. Literally, all right. Anyone, like, I am so frustrated right now.
I know, I'm sorry. If, like, as a piece of personal advice that, like, a lot of people do on the internet, there are some topics that just aren't worth it because of stuff like this, which is unfortunate. And it's one of my biggest criticisms of, like, maybe I'll sound transparent. It's like of like kind of like the more like militant trans stuff that goes on online. Something that I have to remind my audience like a lot, and I've said this a ton throughout my career. I know so many real life trans people that are like such fucking cool people, and they're so chill, and people misgender them in real life, and they correct them, and they're polite about it, and they laugh, and everybody is like, and they're so much more chill than like the insane militancy that exists online. And I wish that sometimes like people just weren't as like so hardcore about it. Yeah, I think that there is like legitimacy behind saying that like there are certain topics that I'm just not going to deal with because like the fallout is too much, and like the level of carefulness that you have to be in navigating these topics is just like so unbelievable. And then I guess like even if you are trans and you have these conversations, like people are still saying that you're transphobic or true scum or whatever, like it's brutal. And then you also have to keep in mind, you go to are you in law school now?
Oh yeah, no, I'm in law school. I'm working 2
I'm pretty
externships.
sure.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
very busy.
I'm pretty sure, I could be totally wrong, guys. Maybe you live in San Francisco, but I'm pretty sure that you know that like the level of where trans discourse is on the internet is also so far removed from like where people in the real world are too, that it's also like really crazy. Like there are people in the real world, you might casually hear people still say things like she-male and tranny. Like they don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like the level of like how much more progressive online, in some ways is really cool. It's really good at how much more progressive the conversation is online for the trans issues. But like versus where they are like in the real world, the fact that people are like so quick to crucify you as being like the worst transphobic person, like on the same level as like Donald Trump or something, is like, I think that's really disappointing and really frustrating.
Yeah. I probably have to start just talking to my community. I'm gonna start bringing
Yeah, that's
people in
fine.
chat.
No, yeah,
so
you're
what
fine. Go for it.
So what I'll say, just to wrap up, right? Like the main thing to take away, like if you're gonna watch the video, just make sure that like to take a lot of what we had discussed into it, right? Like to the best of your ability. I don't know, maybe like if you're gonna like, I don't know, if it ends up becoming like a video or something, like have like a disclaimer at the beginning, right? Like, hey, listen, I understand that this is a person who my community broadly doesn't like, or we've had bad blood or whatever. Do not, under any circumstance, go out, harass, harm, target, whatever this person. Do not in any way like cause harm to this person. If you do, I'll ban you. Like, and you know, you don't have to like necessarily say this, but like normally, you know, you might not do this for every single conversation. You don't necessarily want to be walking around like eggshells all the time. But like for this kind of a situation, given the particular,
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Just as a way to basically be like, to try and do whatever is reasonable to preempt any kind of harm.
Sure.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna start pulling people into my chat.
All right. Good luck. Be careful. Some topics are just worth not engaging with, depending on the size of your community. I like, for me personally, like I don't mind doing this because I can cut off like a huge portion of my community and still be okay. But especially when you're a smaller content creator, like it sucks because sometimes you have to deal with all the negatives of being a large content creator without having the same financial support.
Hold on,
Does that make sense?
Sorry, hold on. Did I miss it? RGR, I love it. Let Destiny say the T slur just like that. Wait, hold on. Did you? I didn't hear that.
Some people say tranny or she-male in real life. Should I say T slur? I don't know if I refer. Sorry. Oh.
Okay, yeah, no. People are saying don't say. I mean, like I've said it once or twice.
T slur or S slur. Sorry, I don't know what the jargon is, but or the appropriate way to refer to it. But like people still use like offhandedly like transphobic ways to refer to people in real life and think it's like totally fine.
Yeah.
My bad.
Well, I mean, like, so I mean, like, it's probably good that you do not, you know. Destiny said the T and the S slur. What a power move. He's at it again. What the fuck?
Okay, I'm gonna take off. All right, listen, good luck with your community. Good luck with your chats.
Do not, okay, don't say
You're
those.
Super cool.
I understand, but yeah, all right, I'll talk to you later.
All right, yeah, be careful, okay? Good luck.
Bye.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. Hey, Destiny, what's happening?
Yeah, what up? Hey, what's up, Destiny?
Oh boy, hey, what's up?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I was talking to other people. But like, if you just need something for a couple seconds, what's up?
Oh yeah, 2 quick seconds. I'm sorry, because I'm just listening through this and I'm just like taking notes or whatever. So here's one quick thing for conversations. Usually, if you're having, I don't want to say layman's conversations, but non-philosophical conversations, I try to always avoid using like philosophical terms like logical fallacy or infinite regress. I think instead it's way better to just give an example of why things are bad and not just expect that somebody will understand what you mean when you say like infinite regress or logical fallacy. Because to most people that doesn't mean anything. Like they'll take that as a challenge sometimes.
Right.
Like so, for example, because it's frustrating because like most of what you're talking about at the beginning here is like inarguable. So you're basically making this argument that like you can't just say that you are anything because then nothing is anything. Like you can't just say that I am X, therefore I am X, because you could literally say like I am anything, right? Like that doesn't make any sense. And then Demon Mama keeps challenging you to define like, well, what is a woman? And then trying to broadly appeal to the fact that a lot of people think a lot of different things about what a woman is. You could very easily just say like, well, what about the category of car? You couldn't say that you're a car, right? However, if you ask people to draw a car, everybody's going to draw something different. But broadly, as a society, we all kind of understand what a car is. That type of argument. I see what you're saying here, but yeah.
Okay. I mean, like, I
then
think I'd try to later, but I probably could have been clearer that earlier on. Sure.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, just giving an example for why anybody can't just say they're anything would, I think, shut that down really quick, because it's really silly that anybody would argue against that.
Have you gotten to where
also-
I'm like talking like the Jesus motherfucking Christ example?
No, not yet. I'm 36 minutes in. But then
Okay.
the second thing, because I'm writing down.
Before you proceed to the next one, let's just hash that for two. Did I just get an oh god on that?
Oh wait, well hold on. Like,
Yeah, because
like,
this is the type of, I'm trying to stay away from the debate lordy stuff right now, Mike. Because my advice to RGR, because you're like the ultimate debate lord. I'm trying to give RGR advice on how to non-debate lord talk to normal people.
Well, okay,
well, all right, yeah. Let's just
I think-
ask yourself.
well,
I really
once-
appreciate it. I just
once-
want to like Destiny. What do you got for me?
Yeah,
wait,
okay,
wait, one sec. Let's just go one thing at a time.
Well,
so I was just gonna say
no. Hold on.
well,
No, I just
wait,
really want to hear this because
sorry.
Destiny just wanted to join
Okay,
for a quick second.
Well, just one sec. So
All right, I need to ask yourself. All right, what's up, Destiny?
I'm sorry. I don't want to start. I just wanted to come in and just give like some feedback, like real quick, just super quick on this. Okay, he's gonna disagree with me to the death. Okay, but like just when you're talking to normal people, you can't just use like philosophy terms because people are never gonna like logical fallacy. Like people just get really turned off by that. That was my first thing. The second thing is, have you ever heard of the terms gender expression and gender identity?
Well, yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah. So I was having some trouble following your arguments until I understand everything you're saying now, because I think when you say subjective or objective gender, when you say objective gender, that maps on totally to my understanding of gender expression. And when you say subjective gender, that matches or maps onto my understanding of gender identity. I don't know if I only know the trans communities that I've been in. I hear those two words used a lot. I personally don't like the words gender, subjective gender and objective gender, because to most people, objective is a word that is loaded and it sounds way better than subjective. Like, why would I care about your subjective gender when I know about your objective gender, right? Because people view it as being a little bit more loaded. I personally like using the terms like, I might have mixed up how you use them, but like I like using the terms like gender identity and gender expression, because I think it gets across like gender identity is like, this is what you identify internally, irrespective of what anybody else says. Gender expression, this is how you express your gender, and necessarily that involves some level of like cultural norms. It has to, because that's how everybody expresses themselves and agrees, like expresses their gender or whatever, right?
Yeah, no,
Or
I mean,
that's
like,
how I view it.
and like I get that. I guess that the reason why I went with defining it as like a form of gender is because it seems to be consistent with like some of the forms of the literature. So like a lot of the sources, like if you go through them, it talks about gender as like not just the thing that's in your head, but like as the like expression in society, right? So like
For sure.
Judith Butler, Zimminger, or whatever the other last name source is, and a lot of like the organizations will define, like they will define gender as gender expression, and like yeah, I think that I agree. Like we could probably use those terms interchangeably, but like the reason I chose that wording was just because it seemed more true to like the source material.
For sure. And I understand that. Just difference between like academic conversation versus like kind of like more public informal conversation. As a lay person, when I hear somebody refer to like, because I'm trying to be really charitable towards Demon Mama here, even though she's being highly antagonistic towards you, I can understand her frustration and like, what is gender? And then you're giving like subjective and objective. When somebody gives me a subjective thing and an objective thing, I'm thinking in my head, well, the objective thing must be correct, and the subjective thing is just something that somebody's tricked themselves into thinking. Like they can't both be true at the same time. You can't have a subjective understanding of something and an objective understanding of something. Like one is going to be wrong. I think that like I can understand how a lot of people get tripped up there, which is for me personally, using the term gender expression and gender identity. These are things that can exist simultaneously with each other. Sometimes they might be in conflict, sometimes they won't be. And then it also helps me explain like gender dysphoria a lot more than like objective or subjective gender. That's just my personal take on it. You know, obviously, but that's just how I view it, and it helps me have these conversations. But
Okay, I mean, like, yeah, I think that you could meaningfully, like, again, like, I think that, like, I'm not necessarily saying that, like, this is the end all be all, like, definition that other people have to use. The reason I was using it a lot here was just because, like, there was a very glaring issue with Demon Mamas, and so I was using mine as a point of reference. If other people want to use, like, definitions of what it means to be, like, a gender or trans, and they otherwise don't run into like these kind of logical issues, and like I'm not going to take any issue with them, right? Especially if they're not a public figure. Like then there's really no kind of risk, right? So like, yeah, like I think that it's reasonable to be able to like delineate it between like gender identity and expression. Like, yeah, that maps on with my understanding as well. I don't think that like, as far as like the outcomes, that there's probably like a material difference.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think literature, or philosophically, I think for subjective and objective, one has to do with like the object and one has to do with like an observer, basically, is like the distinction in like philosophical literature. But in the layman's terms, nobody uses it that way. So like that could be like one of these. But okay, all right, I'm hopping back and listening to this. Okay. Also, I'm writing these down as I hear them because they're really funny. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that they're funny for me to listen to, but obviously they're shitty for you to deal with. You're sounding frustrated. You're acting like Destiny. You started getting worked up. I've been doing this longer. You don't have to do the little snipes. That's fine, Riley. I'm writing down. These are like really, holy shit. She's like goading you super fucking hard in this. It was my favorite was when she said you sounded like me, and then said, but that wasn't an insult.
By the
Oh
way,
my
hold
God.
on. Quick question. I just need your feedback on this. People are saying that I was acting unreasonable or uncharitably. At this point in the conversation, maybe it changes later. At this point, do you think I'm in any way acting unreasonably?
No, I think you're trying to get a point across, and the part where you sound unreasonable is when you keep saying like this is a logical fallacy. It's true,
Okay.
but I think you need to explain that a little better because Demon Mama clearly wasn't understanding that. And the problem with these conversations is that you can't act like the person you're talking to is going to be charitable or make an effort to understand your point. You have to like hammer it the fuck home because Demon Mama is not making any effort to understand. Instead, what she's doing is she's trying to catch you or get you in things you're saying and showing everybody else how they're horrible. That's what her mode of operation is. I don't know if she can do that for the rest of the debate, but right now she's trying to think is what is Riley saying in a way that I can make sound really fucking horrible? And that's where she's operating on everything. So you have to be like, I think a little bit more concise and making sure your points are understood by the average person, I think is how I would view it.
Okay. I mean, I think I like I mean, like you can make this determination yourself. Like I think that I tried to explain it like very clear. Like basically the whole debate, like the whole 2 hours is just this point.
Oh God. All right. Well, we're going.
All right.
Somebody brought up. Oh wait, I think you already said the attack helicopter thing. Yeah, that like that's literally like Demon Mama's point is just so hilariously incoherent that anything could be anything and nothing is not. It's just really silly. But yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go jump back and listen to this. Be careful.
Okay. Bye.
All right.
Hey. Yo, third time's a charm. What's up?
Okay, what's up? How you doing?
Doing all right. How's life?
I'm
Over
an hour and 45 into it. I got a lot of points and a lot of questions. Okay.
Okay. What's up? Hit me.
Yeah. So the first thing. So these are reasons why I don't ever, why I would never engage with Demon Mama in good faith. If I would, it would just be to make fun of them or scream at them.
Okay.
Here's just like a concept. I don't know if you've ever heard of this before. Have you ever heard of the concept of crazy making?
No, I've never heard of that.
Okay. So imagine that we're having, so some people are really good at appearing calm. I think I'm really good at appearing calm. And I think Demon Mama is very good at appearing calm. The idea is that I needle and I poke you and I prod you and I piss you off until I've said things that are like genuinely hurtful and pretty insulting. And then when you start to get emotional, I sit there and I'm like, why are you so upset? What's wrong? Why are you like this? This is something that Demon Mama is very, very, very good at. It's something that I noticed was happening in this conversation that Demon Mama was like attacking you over and over again. And you started to get emotional. And then Demon Mama like retreated into those like, why are you so upset? I don't understand why you're cutting me off. And then like pretending like she wasn't like needling you the entire time is something that I noticed in this. That's not like a point for the arguments or just something to keep in mind, I guess.
Well, I mean, like I mean, like I don't know, because a lot of people are saying that like essentially, like a lot of people are making out that like, oh, I got angry or oh, I got unreasonable or oh, I was like too emotional during that, and like I keep saying over and over like it, and maybe it's falling on deaf ears. I don't know, but I don't know. Like you can draw your own conclusions. My impression from that conversation was that every point, like literally every point. I was calm, I was fine, I was trying to vibe, and then she was the one who was instigating me to try and make me angry.
So I mean, I'm definitely not going to agree with that. There were parts where you weren't calm and you started to get upset, of course. I will say, though, that audiences are very stupid, and this is one of the reasons why these tactics is so incredibly effective at gaslighting and manipulating somebody. Usually people just perceive louder as being emotional and quiet and calm as being correct and not emotional. This is where conservatives get their aesthetic of like, facts over feelings and all of that. That if I say a bunch of incredibly attacking or disgusting things towards you, as long as I maintain this disposition, when you start to become understandably upset, I can point to you and go, look, you're unhinged. You're being crazy. And then I can start to say a lot of really patronizing things about you. Like, I think you're being very emotional in this conversation. I don't think you're ready to have it. And then I'm kind of, but the implication that the audience has is that like, you've gotten really emotional out of nowhere. And I've been incredibly calm the entire time. But the reality is that I'm saying things that I know are like really attacking you. So like, for instance, like you implored, do not impugn my morality. And she responds, over and over again, like, I didn't impugn your morality. But she did. She specifically brought up me as a comparison. And so like, you're making the destiny argument that minorities are responsible for other people interpret their actions and you're holding us responsible. Blah, blah. She was saying something like that. She was impugning morality, but then, she's pretending that she doesn't afterwards. And yeah, I say this is like a huge trend, at least in the early part of the conversation. You guys will calm down a lot now. But I think that was like interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, like later on, especially like after. So I mean, like originally, I can't remember if I had it down. Like I can't remember if I still have a time stamped out. Like essentially, the way that I remember the conversation was like there were like 2 rounds initially, right? There's like round 1 where the conversation to me kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere and suddenly like, oh shit, there's a debate, right?
Yeah. So real quick, the reason why this is happening is the way that so people like Demon Mama or Vosh, they work from optics first and then they work their way back from there. We haven't gotten to it yet, but I feel like it's coming. What Demon Mama is doing is anytime she hears certain trigger words, she's trying to push you into making a very horrible argument. So I don't know if it's going to happen, and don't spoil me, but she keeps alluding to this turfy idea of like transmedicalism, where she's saying like, are you saying I need dysphoria to be trans? And that's not what you're saying at all. You're like, no, I'm talking about mental conditions, blah, blah. But she keeps trying to route it back to that. It wouldn't surprise me, and I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but it wouldn't surprise me if in the next hour of this debate, at some point, she tries to pigeonhole you into saying, well, you're saying dysphoria is a prerequisite to being trans. You're being true scum. I don't know if that happens, but like that's what it feels like is being set up. And she does that a lot, where she listens for these one-off trigger words to try to like throw you down an argument instead of like actually engaging with what you're saying.
Yeah, so I won't say anything, but no, I think that's I think that's yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I don't want to say anything and spoil the audience.
Sure. Something that like is you're talking around this a lot, and I think you could be a lot more clear.
Okay.
But like, here's the problem that you guys are running into so much. Or you people, I use guys as a plural for they.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm fine with it. But I mean,
okay, yeah. This is the problem that you two keep running into over and over again. And I can understand your frustration. I don't think you're doing a good job at getting to the heart of the matter. So what you're trying to say is that gender exists as some sort of concept that we all agree upon. And Demon Mama is attacking that argument. And Demon Mama is saying, no, actually, that's not true. Everybody has different ideas about gender and whatnot. The problem is that you're pointing to a universal category of gender that exists, but it's fuzzy. Demon Mama is using the fact that it's fuzzy to say that it doesn't exist. So the easiest counter to this is like, if I were to ask 100 people to draw a picture of a car, every single person is going to draw a single person. That doesn't mean that the universal concept of a car doesn't exist.
Wait, everyone's going to draw a single car? You said everyone was going to draw a single person.
Wait, what?
You said everyone was going to draw a single person.
Oh, sorry, I misspoke. Everyone's going to draw. If you ask 100 people to draw a car, everyone's going to draw a different car. Okay. Right? Yeah. But that doesn't mean that the universal category of car doesn't exist. It just means that there's some fuzziness about how we define a car, right?
Yeah.
So like the idea that different people define like woman or man in different ways doesn't immediately mean we throw it out. There's actually a staggering amount of consensus in society, oftentimes to the detriment of trans people, about what woman and man means. Now, if you ask everybody, you might get slightly different answers, but you're going to arrive at some amalgamation of like, in a society, this is roughly what masculinity is, and this is roughly what femininity is. This is incontroversial. I can't believe that anybody would argue against this, but Demon Mama is kind of getting around this by saying, well, different people have different ideas about it, therefore this concept isn't a universal. It doesn't actually exist.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, and that's kind of my, no, that maps onto my understanding, because essentially, like, what you described, and I don't know, maybe I should just get away from this terminology. Like, if it doesn't help me actually explain things about people, to people, if it doesn't help me explain things about to people better, then I won't use it. But I mean, like, that essentially maps onto my understanding of, like, objectivity, right? Now, if that's not useful for these conversations, then I won't use it. But, like, that's kind of, like, the way that I've explained these ideas. That, like, broadly, if you were to, like, construct a hypothetical person where that person is based on, like, if you take the broad averages of what people in society understand an idea to be, and you, like, ask that hypothetical person based on the average opinions of everyone in society, what they're, like, generally, like, what the type of things are that they would elicit for what would be a gender, then we'll get, like, some kind of idea of, like, what most you know, like what most people think of like in certain
For
like
sure.
as certain gender traits, right? Like we're gonna see like broad trends similar to what you described.
Yeah, I think so. So the one thing, so you're having like an hour conversation on this, and it feels like what you're trying to drill down to is you believe that there is a fact of the matter about the internal state of somebody being male or female. That seems to be that seems to be a belief that you have. That there's an internal fact of the matter, right?
I'm not sure if that's just that like because I don't want to say like male or female because I mean like again I'm not trying like some people
For
try to
sure.
pigeonhole
When
me
I say
back.
internal fact of the matter, what I mean is there is a state of like internal. It might be a way you feel. It might not be like a female brain or a male brain, but there is some underlying fact of the matter of like there must be some sort of true thing you're appealing to here, because it seems
Yeah.
like that's the road you're going down with trying to figure. Because Demon Mama essentially says as much, where she's like, I figured out that I was trans. Okay, then it feels like it's not just identifying as trans that makes you trans. There's some underlying fact of the matter that even you yourself are saying you're understanding at some point in your life, right?
Yeah, no, I mean like, and that's I don't know if you got to this point. Like I tried following up on that, right? To be like, all right, so again, I don't know if you got to this point in the conversation, but eventually I asked, okay, so like, are you saying that up until that point that you were actually a guy, like that you actually
exactly.
were unironic, that like up until you came to that realization that you were in fact a guy, and I'm trying to remember exactly how she understood it. I think I asked her if she was like lying about herself, or if she was I asked her if she was wrong, and she didn't answer the question. She was like, well, I don't know if I was wrong.
And this is
yeah.
This is gonna sound. I'm gonna bite the bullet here because your fucking community hates me anyway. And this might sound transphobic. Sometimes when I listen to her talk, I can't tell if she's honestly engaging with your question or if she genuinely hasn't thought about these concepts before. Now, this might just be me as a cis person. I would imagine that anybody that's like going through hormone therapy to transition, I would imagine has spent like a great deal of time reflecting on who they feel they are inside. So when you ask questions about like, do you think that you were lying to yourself when you were like internally felt like a man or a woman or whatever, it's really surprising to me to hear that there might be a trans person that talks about this advocacy is, you know, trying to do hormone therapy that hasn't ever engaged with that question before. That seems like a pretty important question of identity that's really strange to me.
No, and that's essentially the way that I see it. I mean, like a good litmus test usually, I mean, like I was thinking about this earlier, right? But like some ways that we could be able to test this, you know? So like before the way I had thought about it was like, all right, do you genuinely believe that you are who you say you are? But even then that's broken by like the egg question, the trans person who's an egg who lies to themselves, and doesn't realize until they're doesn't realize that they are a trans person until later. But like, I mean, like for me, this also gets at a question of like, all right, why does, for example, like misgendering matter?
Yes.
Right? Because I mean, like if it causes some kind of harm, and I agree, it causes some kind of harm and people should not do it, then like, why does it cause a harm? Like, what is the cause of the harm? Clearly, there's like some kind of response that it elicits on people. And I mean, like some people might just argue, oh, well, it increases the likelihood of harm being caused against other people. It's like, all right, well, what if you're like sitting around with your family, and like someone misgenders you, either intentionally or not, and then there's no risk that any of them are going to. There's like no risk that any of them are going to like harm you physically or personally, right? It was a complete accident. The person messed up. It's like, oh shit, that was a bad thing to do. And they're super sorry. Is that still, it causes mental distress to a person? Well, yeah, exactly. Someone in a,
Vivian.
Yeah.
But like the way to cut through all of this, and I think it's really funny that she said this, the way to cut through all of this is she describes herself as a gender abolitionist. How can you be a gender abolitionist if you don't acknowledge that there are genders to abolish? There must be some social understanding of what gender is if you seek to abolish said genders. I don't know how you can hold those positions simultaneously.
Yeah, no, and I mean, like, that's fair. I think I don't know, I wasn't, like, usually when I get into these conversations, it sucks because, like, I will, like, I don't know if that's apparent. Like, I genuinely do try to follow, like, the line of logic that other people elicit. Like, I do genuinely try. And so, like, I didn't, like, the way that I took that was, like, all right, listen, I'm not talking prescriptively, like, what we should do with gender. I'm trying to talk about what it is right now, you know?
Yeah.
Which might just be another way of trying, kind of saying, like, what you're saying right now, that, like, literally, like, there has to be something that exists right now for you to abolish
You
it.
don't want to change it. Yeah. Something that I wish you would have done. You fell into the trap of using like furry, which is kind of ill-defined.
Yeah.
I wish you would have asked her a question on transracialism. That would have been a
No,
really good
I
way. I don't know
thought
if
about that earlier today.
yeah,
Fuck.
because
Yeah.
like if you identify as black, because racial concepts are highly fuzzy. They're debated on the biological level and they're debated on the social level, and they can even be debated on the identity level, depending on how people identify. Right? That would have could I identify as black if I want to? And if she says no, well, why not? Like, even though there's a lot of fuzziness, a lot of people will argue about what is black and what isn't black from a social level, from a biological level, from a phenotypical level. Like, a lot of people argue a lot of different things about that. But you could just and then her argument at some point, now if she's being honest, although it doesn't feel like she is in this, she would have to acknowledge at some point that there is some underlying fact of the matter. It might even be as silly as what your skin color is that appears to dictate that. And then she would have to appeal, well, socially, we understand some races as well, which is similar to gender, right? You don't have to commit to some hard line, transmedicalist hard line take on like, we have female brains and female bodies and male brains and male bodies. You don't have to commit to that to admit that there are broadly categories of what we consider to be male and female. Like, this isn't like a controversial topic. And it doesn't, the strange thing is, and again, at the risk of sounding transphobic, I feel like the scary thing, and I don't know if you'll get to this, but it feels like you're implying this, and then I'll just come out and say it, is a lot of Demon Mama's rhetoric seems incredibly invalidating to a lot of the trans experience. When you're saying things like, society doesn't actually recognize any amount of what is male or female. Society has no rules for that at all. I'm willing to bet that there are a lot of trans people out there that experience a great degree of dysphoria that actually don't feel that way at all. Society actually hardcore recognizes the construct of male and female. And when you fail to meet that societal expectation, it makes you feel really, really, really fucking bad about yourself. So it seems really weird to have all of these strange takes about how society has no concept of male or female, but there are trans people that go through great efforts to meet that societal expectation that Demon Mama says doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. The thing with that's careful, because I mean, like, I don't know. Now I'm very quickly turning into, I don't know. I'm very quickly turning from the most agreeable person in online politics into one of the most controversial, because I have an associate with a lot of people, and I know a lot of people have different experiences, right? And so, like, I do know that there's a lot of trans people who are, like, usually these end up being like binary trans people. They're people who are like post-transition. They've like socially transitioned fully, like they live as their current genders and all that, right? And these are people who, and I'm not talking about everyone, like, obviously this, like, I want to make sure that I'm clear, like, this does not describe all binary trans people. There are plenty of people who I'm close to who are in my community who do not hold these feelings necessarily, but there are a lot of binary trans people who do, like, hold very closely to the idea that, like, wait a second, I don't want my gender to be abolished. I want, like this is who I am. This is the core of my being. Like, don't try, like you are saying.
Have you ever heard of the concept of gender euphoria?
I mean, like, I definitely have heard of that idea. Like, I like that idea. Like, generally, I like the gender euphoria argument, because it means that, like, that's another way, for example, that people can experience, like, that's another example of, like, a mental processy, like what I had discussed, which can indicate to someone that they may be trans, right?
There's
Like,
an underlying fact of the matter. It's not just an arbitrary social thing that is just a linguistic semantic thing. There seems to be some underlying fact of the matter that people do something that maps onto reality.
Yep.
Again, not saying there's like a trans brain or a female brain or whatever, but there is like something, something that I've made this mistake a lot in the past, and I'm trying to rectify it. Unfortunately, a lot of arguments that I hear Demon Mama making are like third generation, like 2015 Destiny arguments, and they're filtered down through Vosh. I engage in a great deal of philosophical deconstruction in my stream, where we take apart, like, let's take apart like the concept of gender, or let's take apart the concept of these different types of categories. And what people do is they deconstruct so much that they get stuck at the bottom of some weird nihilistic black hole, and they seem to think that just because something is a social construct means it's not real. But that's absolutely not true. Like male and female, even male and female sex is socially constructed. All scientific categories are. But just because something is socially constructed doesn't mean it's not real. And it doesn't mean it doesn't have a very real impact in people's lives. And it doesn't mean you can't have meaningful conversations about it. That weird nihilistic falling out of where you're like, oh, well, it's all fake, it's not real, is just really silly to me. And it doesn't map onto people's real world experiences.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, no, and I mean, like, I broadly agree with all that. The problem for me, and I mean, like, among all the other problems, is that, like, I have made that argument before, like, multiple times, right? Like, they're like these takes are not unique to this discussion. These takes are not unique to this debate.
Of course.
And so, like, it's very, I mean, like, we can speculate. There's plenty of reasons that we can probably come up for why people are taking issue here in particular. But I mean, like, it's very troubling to me that essentially, like, I can make these takes all the time, like these literal exact takes all the time, debating against, like, especially like transphobes or people who are, you know, like broadly anti-trans people, TERFs, all that good stuff. Like, I can make these exact takes and dunk on people, and people love it. And then I make these exact arguments against someone like Demon Mama, and suddenly everyone like loses their mind.
Yeah, it's really frustrating.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. So it's have you gotten to? Oh, also, by the way, I have to ask: have you gotten to like the the objects, or her using like objects as like a as like?
Yeah, so I think you're faltering a little bit here, and I understand what you're going for, but like, so when you use, so yeah, so this is like, so you're trying to say, can anybody identify as Jesus Christ? So I'm borrowing from Plato here. And when I say I'm borrowing from Plato, what I really mean is I'm borrowing from the Wikipedia that talks about Plato. So he uses terms like universal and particular.
Okay.
And what you're trying to argue is that universals exist and are recognized by people, even if they're not exact. But unfortunately, the example that you gave was a particular. So you're saying, yeah, people can identify as universals, like male or female, but it's not just enough to say that, like, oh, I am a universal, therefore I am one. That doesn't make sense. Like, I can't identify as a car or an attack helicopter, right? Like, these categories, they might be socially constructed, but they have meaning. But then when you tried to challenge Demon Mama's understanding of that, you gave an example of a particular, like Jesus Christ. Do you think you're Jesus Christ of Nazareth? It's like, well, no, because there's an underlying fact of the matter for you. That's why I was saying that a really good example here would have been like identifying as black, because that's another universal socially constructed concept, and not like a person that we obviously can't identify as a particular. Yeah.
Okay. Did you get to the president one? Like, does that work?
The president one is closer, but again, the president one is such it is a category, but it's a category of one person that is incredibly well defined as well. I think that arguing whether or not you're like a senator maybe would work, because senators aren't real. You could identify as a senator, but somebody would argue, well, hold on, like there's senators like exist in the government. It's like, yeah, but it's socially recognized, right? Like, this is a social category. I just think the transracial argument cuts right to the heart of this.
Yeah.
Because if Demon Mama says you can't be transracial because races are real, that's a pretty sweaty argument to make, but it's kind of true, right? It maps on to some underlying fact of the matter. We generally consider black people relating to skin color. There are some things that maps onto, right? So she would have to agree that, like, okay, sure, race is fuzzy, but it exists. So, okay, well, cool. Well, male and female are fuzzy, but they also pretty clearly exist, I think.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. No, I thought about that earlier when I was at work, and I was like, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like, after you have a debate,
Arguments in the shower with yourself, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, God damn, like, I wish so bad that would have been able to go back, that I can go back in time and say, like, this particular thing. But no, I mean, like, that makes sense. I think, like, eventually we get back, like, we sort of got, like, I don't know how far along you are. Eventually we get back onto the, like, lying to yourself trans person, which I think gets to where I'm trying to go. But yeah, no, I could, like, yeah, no, it was just like weird because I don't know, I'd never heard like the idea that, like, oh, you can't identify that as that, like, that's an object. Like, to me, the way that came across was that often that was being used just as like a oh, you're giving me something which like you're giving me an example that breaks the way that I'm defining gender, or at least like the formula the kind of formula I'm using for defining gender. And so I'm just gonna hand wave it away as like an object and say that doesn't apply. But no, like the way that you described it, like, that makes sense. Like, I can concede that, like, okay, like defining as like an individual person or as an object, like an actual object. I'm not sure if, like, that doesn't make sense, right? Like, saying that, like, Jesus motherfucking Christ is an object, like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, so when she says object, she means to say particular. If you frame it in the term of universals, so like it's a universal broadly agreed upon category, and then a particular is a thing that is a subset of the universal. So like the classic example is like chair, that's a universal category, and then we have particular chairs, right? Yeah, so that's why the Jesus thing doesn't work, because you're using a particular as an example when you're trying to make a conversation about universals. Something like a gender would be like, I think, a universal or whatever, right? Like a gender category that exists is like a universal thing. Yeah. But, okay.
No,
I'm at 1:45:30. All right, I'll poke you later when I'm.
Okay, sounds good. Talk to you later. Hello?
Hi.
Hey, how's it going? Sorry for the delay. I was talking to one of my friends in my server. That was actually the last couple conversations have actually been pleasant, so I'm happy about that. I'm chilling. I'm playing my game.
That's good. Wait, what are you playing?
The Elder Scrolls Online.
Yikes. Okay.
Yeah. I've been playing it. I don't know. A lot of people, like, I know that my community probably actually doesn't like the game all that much, but I've been playing since launch, and I don't know, it just makes me happy. So,
Games like that, if it's just a bunch of like MMO farming, we're not trying to degrade the game, but if you can have conversations while playing it, they're actually usually really good stream drivers. People aren't really there for the game, but they get to hear you talk about concepts and whatnot. Like that's what I've been doing this entire stream, is playing a game that literally my entire fucking community hates. But I oftentimes, if you look at my stream stats, I usually get the biggest viewership on games that my stream hates. But that's usually because I'm not actually like, they're not there for the game; they're just listening to me talk about things in the background.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's literally what's going on right here. Like everyone watching me right now like that. I hate to be the one to admit it, but they are not watching me look at the newest ESO DLC content. Like they're not. I like it. But yeah. So what's up? Oh, did you hold on? You didn't watch like to the end, did you?
Not all the call-ins, no.
Okay.
Although I imagine they probably got pretty heated.
Yeah, no, just a little bit. Don't watch the last couple minutes. I'm saying that, and I know that people are gonna fast forward there, but like it's public knowledge.
Yeah, that makes me really want to watch the last couple minutes.
Don't no, God. I mean, like you can't.
I mean, I want to do it on stream, of course, but like
yeah. Basically, I just had. I don't know. Like essentially, what had happened. I'll just summarize it here. So my community, in the same way that I feel like they've been treating me tonight, I just felt like they were not listening to me, and they were ascribing a lot of things to me that I did not say or did not believe.
Yeah.
Like I was so frustrated, and also it really did hurt. Like it genuinely did hurt, because like a lot of people were starting to ascribe like really morally bad positions to me. And it just and it came, like it hurts, you know. Like I do this. Like, do I enjoy this to some extent? That in some way motivates me. Like, sure, but I primarily do like this particular form of content as opposed to like just being an ESO streamer, because I care, you know. And
it also sucks when like something that, and again, I don't know, but people say I use loaded words or whatever, but like I think it's really shitty when you tell somebody, like if I was arguing with a woman and you know we were getting into big disagreements and I was like kneeling the fuck out of her and I was like, I think you're just emotional and that's why you don't really get this argument, and just leave it at that. Or somebody's telling you like, oh, I think you're just trying to justify your existence, like sorry, like that's why you're so heated over this. Like I think that's a really dismissive and demeaning way of approaching somebody's argument. Unless you know you're trying to shit on them, then I guess it's effective. But if you're genuinely trying to meet somebody in good faith, just tell somebody like, oh, you're just obsessed with justifying who you are and that's why all of your arguments are so irrational. I think that's an incredibly shitty thing to say to somebody.
I really appreciate hearing that. Fuck, I don't think I've actually heard that once in the entirety of tonight. So
because and this is why like it's a shitty thing to say. I guess this is what I mean when I say like that feels like pretty transphobic to me. It's like you're literally levying somebody's identity at them. Like that's something I would expect to hear like a conservative say to you. Like you're a crazy trans person. Like I don't expect you to understand any of this stuff. It's like incredibly invalidating, I think. So. Yeah.
Oh hey, look at that thematic timing. Book Smarts just rated me with 21 people.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I know, right? The whole cast is here. All right, wonderful. But thank you. Yeah, no, it's. I don't know. I agree with that. I'm not sure. I don't know. Like, I have to think more. I don't think it's an unreasonable read to say that that's like transphobic. I do certainly think that like it's at the very least it's a direct attack, right? It's an ad hom. It's directly impugning.
It's an ad hom based on the fact that you are trans.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Okay.
It literally only works here because you're trans. Like if you were gay, I couldn't say I think that your gayness is preventing you from making a good argument about this trans issue. It's literally like because you are trans, you can't engage with this topic because it's clouding your judgment. It's literally that. But I mean,
yeah. So what was your all right? So like that all aside. So what was your read of the rest of it? Like all right. So you watched through. It got a little heated towards the end there. What? Yeah. So what do you got for me?
I mean, I think that most of the stuff that you need to keep in mind, this is going to sound incredibly rich coming from me because I've only recently started working on this, is you have to be very careful with optics. And that's where, even if you don't realize it, I think that's where most of your frustration is coming from, is that when you get into an argument with somebody that's focused on optics and you're trying to be focused on like getting to the root of the argument, you're going to get so incredibly frustrated so many times because the other person is going to be making appeals so much to things that you don't even know you're actually discussing or talking about. And you're going to feel like confused and bewildered. And it's like, oh, wait, why do you not understand this? But the other person is playing to the audience the entire time. So I think you have to be really careful to understand it at some point. It's going to sound like I'm basically just saying like Demon Mom is bad faith, Demon Mom is bad. But like, I truly do believe that's something really important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So like, especially if you're gonna like fight with your audience at the end over it, which by the way I totally approve of. I fight with my audience all the time, fuck them. But if that's gonna happen, like you have to be super mindful of how like what you're saying, not like what you are like what is like logically deducible from what you're saying, but like optically how does it sound,
Thank
because that's
you.
what people are ultimately
Literally,
going to be
that was not
fighting
the same thing that I
over,
got from everyone else.
fighting with
okay?
you, fighting with
Sorry, that was the
fighting
impression
over
I
with
got.
you at the end of the day.
We
There
can
you go.
talk more after, but
It's
like
how
don't make
things
this
sounded,
personal.
not like the soundness of your arguments, but like did you sound mean or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're against somebody that's so good at being calm while they're like shitting on you, you're always going to have the disadvantage of sounding like unhinged or emotional or upset or angry, while other people, especially just normal humans listening to the conversation, aren't going to be able to pick on the fact that like this person is actually needling the fuck out of you and is actually like making you so fucking upset and frustrated with how they're like intentionally almost like not engaging with your points and then throwing subtle jabs at you over and over again that seem to just be like, oh, you know, like she's just pointing out that you sound like this, or you know, blah blah, or she's just pointing out that like, you know, you kind of are making turfy arguments. Like that's a fair thing to point out, not realizing that like you're in the middle of trying to make a reasonable argument and then this person is just like basically implying that you're being like a piece of shit or whatever over and over again. It's like really really frustrating.
Yeah. So actually, all right. So that's interesting because I mean, like, one reason why I was I said demons want to attack your personality at the end is really fucking shitty. Okay, listen. I need to. All right. I will talk to you in a little bit. God, I've never argued with my chat more than in the past 48 hours. But anyway, first time for everything. So essentially, my impression coming out of there, because I mean, like, I think that this will help me understand my community because I genuinely believe, like, my genuine impression coming out of there was that I was as calm as I could be under the circumstances, right? Like, even if I got more elevated or emotional or whatever you want to say at points throughout, that like considering everything that was happening, that I handled myself like basically as reasonably as one could be expected. Do you think, regardless whether or not you agree with that sentiment, do you think that like someone in the audience, like a reasonable audience member, could disagree with that? Like could walk away from there basically being like, oh yeah, no, Demon Mom was right, Riley was being unhinged, or Riley was being really mean, or whatever. Like, do you think that that's something that like an average person could reasonably do, or do you think that's like probably a read for only a minority of people who watched that?
I think an average person could come away with the take. I think an average person will come away with the take that you were I hate to use the word unhinged, but like, yeah, unhinged. I think that actually would be like the reasonable thing. Unfortunately, people will hear if you raise your voice, you're unhinged. If you remain like cool and collected, then you're chill. Like that's it. Like that's how people will hear things, which is ironically enough, like one of the big reasons why it used to be that like SJW community server would call out against tone policing. And the reason why people would call out tone policing is because, well, hold on, like it can be really, really hard to remain like super calm and emotionally detached from arguing about things related to like identity. So yeah, I think that a normal person will listen to any argument, and if one person just sounds quieter and calmer, then they'll generally give the take like, oh yeah, like I think that person was chill the whole time, and you like were out of control for no reason. Unfortunately, I would disagree with it because I'm familiar with like, I hate to call them like abuser tactics, but they really are like with like these types of like argumentative tactics. I'm very familiar with them. So like I could see it and be like, yeah, I understand what's happening here. And you know, in one way, it's kind of entertaining to watch from mine because I know exactly what's happening and I 1,000,000% can empathize with your feeling. But every single person in the audience is just going to shit at you for being emotional. And it's the same thing that like Ben Shapiro does. You know, when Ben Shapiro will attack people on like matters of identity, and then everybody will be like, oh my God, like here's like a screaming, screeching, you know, woman or trans person or gay person. They're so irrational. And it's like, well, you know, like they might seem that way a little bit, but like, damn, like you're attacking their identity. And they're not always being irrational. Like sometimes they just get like upset over things, but that doesn't make the argument bad, right?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like I genuinely believe that like that wasn't the impression, but like, I don't know, I value your opinion. Like like if that is actually like what your impression of is there from there, then that can contextualize.
Not to be very clear,
yeah.
It sounds a little nuanced, but like that's not my impression. I just think that's what the average impression will be.
Yeah. Like if you think that's what the average impression will be, then I can understand more why my community may be the way that they are right now. Because essentially like right now, my impression was that like, oh, there's no way that anyone from my community could have walked away from that conversation. And if they actually watched me and if they actually were familiar with me, if they knew my arguments, which I had made there in that conversation multiple times before, then like no one should be able to, like, no actual fan of mine should be able to walk away from there and
Yeah.
be able to like hold me and hold this against me.
Mhm. Another thing is going to matter, and this is incredibly important, is how your audience is primed against a certain person as well. So, like, my audience actually almost completely agreed with your take, but that's because they're all like pretty primed to hate Demon Mama. So that's not as surprising to me.
Sure.
And like people might even be able to argue that, oh well, Destiny's only giving this take because he hates Demon Mama, which I like to think that's not how I'm viewing it, but it could be. Maybe I just don't know.
Hold on.
But like, if you something that I implore you to watch, and it will feel incredibly relieving to watch it. Have you watched Demon Mama argue with the Scrub King?
No, I have not.
I highly recommend it. And I think that you will breathe a sigh of relief because I think you will feel a lot less crazy when you see that she will employ the exact same tactics against him, in terms of like not really honestly engaging with a topic and just trying to trap somebody over and over and over again into admitting something.
Mhm.
And I think it'll make you feel a little bit or I don't know if you feel insane or crazy about how people are perceiving the argument. When you watch her do it to him, I think you'll feel like that same level of frustration where Disrupt King's getting upset and Demon Mama is like applying all the same rhetorical tools, and you'll be able to empathize like, holy shit, like I understand like exactly what this guy is feeling right now, because he's being like gaslit like a motherfucker by her, and she's just trying to trap him over and over again into admitting that he's an incel when that's not at all what was going on. Yeah. I think that's a really enlightening conversation to have. After watching that one and then having a talk with her myself, that's when I decided I would never engage with her in good faith ever, because I don't think that her goal is to do that. Her goal is to just optics, to grow her channel, and then to like make epic meme debate material.
Yeah, I mean, like, that is, yeah, no, I mean, like, that's pretty consistent with my understanding right now. Gonna have to talk to my community because apparently one of my mods unbanned Demon Mama from my Discord while we were talking, or not like while you and me were talking, but during the course of the stream. That was earlier. So, concerns with that. But yeah, I tend to agree with that. Okay, then, no, I'll definitely, I'll certainly, I mean, like, I think that this was, like, I don't know, for me, it was useful. Like, thanks for taking the time to review it, like, first off, because I mean, like, yeah, like I genuinely do appreciate like the feedback on I don't know, like there are a lot of things that were kind of thrown at me in the course of this. Like there are a lot of concepts that happened throughout and just like a lot of tactics that, like, I don't know, obviously, like I was trying to, like, there were a lot of things I was exposed to for the first time that I was trying to navigate through for the first time. And so like I don't know, even
and
like
one thing you're gonna learn, because I from what I've seen, well, actually, I guess I haven't seen too much of your debating stuff or whatever. The type of conversation you have to have with a bad faith actor, it's a totally different ballpark than a conversation you're having with a good faith actor. Like if I'm talking to somebody that's like a friend of mine or somebody that's functioning in good faith, like if I misstep in an argument or whatever, they'll like actively take the time to like fix what I'm saying and like strengthen it before like moving on to the next point. Like there is no deliberate misunderstanding of what's being said. There is no deliberate like misframing or like trying to trap you or something. Like it is a totally different experience. When you're having a conversation, like keep in mind that as I'm giving you like some critiques over like, this is how you could have handled it better. I'm critiquing you insofar as that like you're going to have like a higher burden of dealing with this conversation than you would normally, because I believe the other person is only trying to trap you and trick you. So it's going to make the conversation more difficult. If this was like a good faith conversation, I don't think you would have that much trouble. I think that everything you were saying is like, because even, and you can even watch if you get bored my VOD of it, because I'm a little bit confused initially about like your use of like objective and subjective. I'm trying to understand it. And then as soon as you explain it enough, and then I kind of latch on to like, it maps onto my understanding of like gender identity and expression. I understood everything you were saying past that point like pretty easily, and that was without getting to ask you any clarifying questions or anything at all. So I think that like if somebody's deliberately trying to not understand you, that the way that you have to approach that conversation, you have a much higher responsibility of setting the tone and making sure that you don't look bad because the other person is constantly trying to trip you up.
Right. Well, I think that like and I mean normally I'm pretty, like, I've had a lot of debates with like very bad faith actors, right, where I kind of know exactly what I'm getting into beforehand. Like here, the thing that was like especially troubling for me was that like this is someone who the conversation started out where I was having like a conversation with someone who I assumed to be a good faith actor. Literally, we had been like memeing and talking, like we had like a joking debate about whether or not furries deserve rights. They don't. But like I'm halfway kidding, Jack, but also we got into it during the course of there, so I hope that everyone is taking that in like lighthearted fun or whatever. But I mean, like that was the point, right? Is that like we're like I joined the call with Demon Mama at the beginning, like under the pure pretense of fun and enjoyment. Everything had been fine between us, and so like I legitimately was not like worried about this kind of a thing happening at the onset, you know. And so I think that like that's probably like that may be part of it. That doesn't excuse the fact that like, you know, at a certain point I definitely realized like, oh shit, I'm clearly dealing with someone. Actually, I don't know. Like throughout most of the conversation, I did genuinely conceive of this person in my mind as like like I was trying to legitimately reach this person. And I don't think it was on, and it was like somewhere like in the latter half or towards like definitely like towards the end where I just started realizing, okay, there's literally nothing I can say to be able to reach this person.
Yeah, when somebody's not willing to admit that like we have to be able to say that like A equals A, or that something is something, that like anything can't be anything, that's a pretty weird hill for Demon Mama to die on. Like things become like really absurd really quickly. Like when your argument of like you can't just self-identify as anything and be anything, there must be some underlying thing there. Like somebody's not willing to admit that, like it's a pretty rough start to the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, like obviously, like now I know more about her, and I also know more about like these particular kinds of arguments. So if I ever encounter them again, then I mean, like obviously, like I don't think that this is going to be the end of this. Like there are a lot of people in my waiting room who I'm not going to get to tonight, probably because it's 12:40 and I have work. But I mean, you know, I'm clearly going to have to make these arguments in the future. So you know, I think I'll be better prepared for them. But yeah.
Yeah. One final thing. So I always say this. Oh, and I think Isaac wanted to fucking fight about this. I'm sorry you left your server. I don't know.
Yeah. So like, hold on. Like, what's the deal between you two? Because literally, what happened was that you joined and you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna explain this thing," and then Isaac tried to cut it, and I was like, "No, like, hold on." And Isaac was like, "No, I really want to sell this right now." And I was like, "All right, no, this is my stream. I'm gonna mute you." And then basically, like right after that, he just left. And so like sorry, go ahead. Like, what's the history between you two?
I don't hate Isaac or anything. I think he's a funny guy. But I think he's like hardcore, like a debate bro. And like he's the type of guy where like if somebody were to say something like I personally think that hot dogs are sandwiches, like it feels like his response would be like, if we were to evaluate the category of sandwich from a metaphysical framework that commits us to some sort of anti-epistemic framework that we analyze through some normative system of like, he would like do that, and he would go like that hardcore, and then he would like, yeah, he's like a hardcore like debate bro person. So I think that when I said, because initially my advice is generally, if you're having a conversation or a debate with somebody, try to avoid philosophy terms as much as possible, because a lot of people aren't going to have like consistent understandings, and it just things turn into a shit show really fast. And I think he was going to argue on that point that like, well, actually the validity of philosophical terms in a debate is paramount to having meaningful or something. I think he was going to argue that, but like, yeah, but we kind of like, I think he doesn't like the fact that I kind of like needle him for that. And I am like kind of a dick about it, but yeah, that's,
well, I mean,
I
like,
don't think we hate each other, or we might, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, basically my only association. I mean, like, again, like, I don't know this person, so like, as far as like our relation, I hope that we're fine, and that my association. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how many the burns I have bridged, or how many bridges I have burned just by having this conversation. I hope it's not that many. I try to be friends with people, but yeah. So I mean, like, I don't know. It like. As far like the way that I treat a lot of my relationships is like, you know, I understand a lot of people have like personal drama, and sometimes like there are people who I just like probably won't try to have a relationship. Like if like I don't know, if the situation's made them such where I could have like a friendship with Ben Shapiro, I probably wouldn't want to, because I feel like he'd probably end up being like a dick, and you know, lots of personal like there's a lot of baggage there, right? Like that's a big thing that's a big thing to bite on, right? But like generally most people have like some kind of personal drama associated with them, and I feel like, you know, as far as like with me, I tried to do it where like as long as like I have a good association with someone personally, even if they have like some bad history or whatever, generally I'll try to like maintain a relationship with them for as much as they want one.
Yeah, same. I usually try to give anybody like the way I put it is I'll give anybody a chance. Like I'm not gonna like condemn somebody for past drama, because I've got a ton of past shit that gets crazy misrepresented by me. So I'm not gonna sit here and like condemn somebody for some internet drama. Like if they fuck up with me, then yeah, I'm done talking about it. The weird like obsessively holding people to account for shit they've done like 5-10 years ago is really weird to me. And you miss out on potentially making new friends, or you miss out on people like redeeming themselves.
Yeah.
One final thing I'll say, or one thing I'll say is, and I could be wrong here because my philosophy is all derived from Wikipedia. I think that you, and this is just for philosophy bros that might come out and fight with you. I think that you would be considered a scientific anti-realist, not a scientific realist. Yeah. So my understanding of this loosely is that a scientific realist believes that like the purpose of science and what science does is it accurately describes an underlying fact of the matter, that the goal of science is to give like descriptions of reality. But somebody else might say, well, science only exists insofar as it serves human purposes. And like the truths of science actually bend to reflect that. And I think that when you do that, that's an instrumentalist viewpoint. So an instrumentalist is somebody that believes that like something exists for the purpose of being utilized by a human, not to serve some own end of itself. And it sounds like what you were saying in terms of like, oh, like we use science to make lives better for ourselves. That's like an instrumentalist position, which I think is a scientific anti-realist position.
Oh,
That's not like really important anything, but if you say something like that, philosophy bros will always come out and attack you, so be careful for them.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely go back and I'll brush up on that. Yeah, no, if I'm using that incorrectly, like if I'm using the terminology incorrectly, then like yeah, I don't want to be burned on something stupid like that. So all right, yeah, that makes sense.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, good luck. Be careful. Stay safe.
Thanks, I appreciate it, and thank you. I really appreciate the help.
Good luck.